Welcome to Legion of Myths Game Master Insight. Tonight, our panel of seasoned tabletop RPG veterans dives headfirst into personal stories, bold expectations, and powerful insights. Get ready to ignite your imagination and elevate your next gaming session. All right, welcome to Legion of Myths Game Master Insight. I am your host, John Maxley-Oshlow, and I am truly grateful you are with us for tonight's discussion. Game Master Insight is a forum where our panelists share experiences, ideas, and advice on tonight's topic of metagaming in tabletop RPGs, highlighting their unique perspectives and expectations. And I sincerely hope you enjoy the conversation. A special shout out for our first-time viewers. I really hope you enjoy this video, share it with your friends, and come back again. Of course, please consider supporting Legion of Myth through the links in the live stream's description. As always, Rumble rants and super chats of less than $20 I will read at the end of each segment. $20 or more, I will interrupt the segment to read your rant or chat as immediately as I can. And $50 or more, I will take a drink in your name, and you can force the panel to answer any tabletop RPG-related question of your choice right then and there. If we reach $100 or more, there we go, in super chats or Rumble rants, there will be a $50 Palladium Books or Drive-Thru RPG gift card giveaway in the rando portion of the show towards the end of the live stream. Legion of Myth YouTube members and Rumble subscribers, as well as tonight's super chatters and Rumble ranters, have the opportunity to win, but you must be watching at the time of the giveaway to claim your victory, else it rolls over to next week. Legion of Myth moderators will time out or even ban people who attack any panelist or chatter. Attack the argument, not the person, and keep your various social media beefs off of my show. Please like this video, subscribe to all the panelists' channels. I only have one in the description right now. If the other two, if you can throw your YouTube channel or whatever you like to promote in the private chat, and I will add it to the description, please. And thank you for your time and support. All right. With all of that out of the way, let's meet our panelists. Well, I get a couple things going on the side here that I hate Windows 11 sometimes. So first, we have, for the first time on the show, we have Phil the Thrill. So please introduce yourself and briefly tell us what products or media you create and what your tabletop RPG experience is.
How's it going, Max? My name's Phil the Thrill, and I am a strong advocate for a certain style of role-playing called 4D, or also known as the hard way. And I role play a lot. I basically just put out a lot of live streams. Sometimes I'll put out the occasional video, but it's been a while because of school and stuff. But yeah, mostly live streams about how to play our way.
Cool. Yeah, we've had Crispy on recently. He was a really awesome guest, and of course, Mr. Max is on here constantly. So yeah, we've had you guys on here quite a bit. Happy to have you here for your first time.
Those are the people I play with: is Crispy, Max, and sometimes Rick.
Actually, Rick, well, in the older version of the show, Rick was on as well. So I've had all you guys on now. All right. Well, we'll slide on over with Timothy Ferrelli. As always, please introduce yourself and briefly tell us what products or media you create and your tabletop RPG experience.
My name is Timothy Ferrelli. I run Characters of Dice, where I make characters so you don't have to. And that's what I just stream and upload. Right now, I'm focusing on Palladium fantasy characters for use by you in any way that you want, completely neutral. And my experiences run all the way back to the late 90s, D&D, and a couple of World of Darkness, several other obscure older systems, but my system of heart is, and always will be, Palladium.
Awesome. And next year we have Doc Flingo. He decided to return. We did not beat him up enough the first time around. He is back. So please introduce yourself and briefly tell us what products or media you create in your tabletop RPG experience.
Hey, all, Doc Flamingo. Published the on Drive-Thru. You can find Ashes and Empires. I have a second game, which is now entering playtesting phase. The second session of which will be showing up 1 week from Sunday on my YouTube channel. So anyone who wishes to check that out. Started playing in 1980, played regularly till around 2000, fell out of the hobby for many years, and got back in just about a little over a year and a half ago now.
All right. Sounds good. And like I said, when you guys have a moment, Timothy and Doc, if you can put a link to whatever you want promoted in the private chat, I will get that into the description so people can follow you, buy your stuff. I don't know. All right.
Yeah, I'm the Rumble wing of 4D.
So,
So if you
I
hate
actually
Google-
appreciate that. I've got your Rumble link in
Yeah.
there. So I'm streaming to Rumble right now. Absolutely
Okay.
love Rumble. The problem with Rumble for me, before we get into our real conversation, is it does need some improvement still. I like it, but I need to be able to download my members list like I can in YouTube, and I need to have a member or a subscriber. It's called subscriber over there. A subscriber only stream. Because these videos go off. Like I get some people that yell at me on Rumble and locals because they're like, "Where's your video? We don't want to do YouTube." Well, as soon as Rumble, because I have subscribers over there, but there's no subscriber only video format. So no, you're not gonna, And since YouTube screwed up the API like a year ago, you can't upload videos or do the auto uploading stuff. So it's they've got to fix a couple of things. And once they do that, I'm a huge fan of Rumble.
Well, you should just make it free on Rumble. Draw your viewers.
I cannot
like
do
a
that.
fly
We
trap.
can talk about that later as
Okay,
to why, but I cannot do that. I have to look. It's just be open about it. I have to give members something. I have to give them some benefit for being members. So having access to about 3,000 more videos than subscribers and having some of this stuff early, it's just a little bit that I have time to do. So
It's fair.
all right. Well, let's get ready to talk about our topic. Before I do that, let's read a super chat. Boom. Mac Thompson says, "Read me." I did. Thank you for the $2. And I read you. Unless he meant like a tarot card reading or something. And well, no. All right. So today we're going to be talking about metagaming. Is it good, bad? Is it a thing? Is it not a thing? Et cetera, et cetera. We're going to hear from these fine folks here what they think about metagaming. And we're going to start off by what the heck is metagaming? So let's define metagaming and its role in gameplay. So we'll start with Phil the Thrill. His first time on, so he gets to get beat up first. How do you personally how do you personally define metagaming in your tabletop sessions, and what do you believe is the most significant impact on the overall flow of play?
Okay, so metagaming, I would say, is basically when you are in the role-playing game and you use knowledge that your character wouldn't have to flavor your actions or do something that would be out of character, out of the context of the game. I would sort of place it on as the opposite of that's basically how I would describe it.
That's fine. It's pretty simple definition. I mean, to be fair, that's pretty much how I define it as well, using out of character knowledge in character. Now, do you think that metagaming is always intentional, or can it happen unconsciously? And please elaborate on that.
So I would say it is always intentional.
Okay.
Because you are. That's a good question. I don't know that people know that they're doing it intentionally, but basically, people will, if you are trying to role play in your role playing game, and you do something that isn't role playing, which I would say metagaming is not role playing, then you are intentionally breaking, I guess, the social contract you have in the game. The 4D style, it very much centers around everything you should do should point back to role playing. So if you're using any kind of outside information, then it's not really coming from that immersive second-hand perception of what's going on in your game, I guess is how I would describe it. So I would say it's intentional, but lots of people don't realize they're not role-playing when they're playing a role-playing game. So they probably don't realize it's intentional. I don't know. That would be my answer.
Okay. Do you guys want to follow up with anything that he said there before I move on to you? Or
I do. So, Phil, here's a question for you. You're playing a wizard, throwing fireballs. They're just not quite hitting the mark. Would you consider saying, if a player says, I'm going to change the combustible element of the fireball to a a gas such as methane and increase the pressure, thus creating a blue fireball, thus making it more powerful. Would you consider that metagaming because they're using their scientific knowledge that we have on a normal basis?
I would say it's fine if the wizard knows that. So if the wizard would know how to manipulate their fireball into this fashion, then of course they can do that if it tactically makes sense, because the wizard is making the tactical decision. So I would not call that metagaming, unless they're just in saying methane and the wizard doesn't know what methane is, I guess. But I wouldn't word it like that. I would say I change. I wouldn't say I try to or anything like that. I would just say what I do.
Right.
And that makes it more of a role-playing action, role-playing turn is what we call it.
Okay.
I'm going to dive down this rabbit hole a little bit. Hopefully this doesn't mess up one of the other questions later, because I'm curious. How do you delineate what, in that case, a character knows? Like, and I've done this at my tables as well. Like, I don't know if your fighter would know that. You know, how do you delineate? And we can keep it general. We don't have to get specifics unless you want to. But like, how do you delineate? Like, that seems a little metagamey to me.
It has a lot to do with trusting your players. I know that this is not a heathen dog answer, but
well, I'm not heathen dogs. You're okay.
That's fair. But okay, if the fighter, the player knows their character better than anyone else at the table. So if the GM trusts their players, then they should expect, and they have vetted their player as a good role player, and they should expect that the player knows what they're doing and they know how to do it. If you really have a question, then you might bring it up. The question is, does it matter enough to stop the game? And if the answer is no, then don't stop the game. I wouldn't ever stop the game for something like that. I guess I would have to get more specific, because
well, that's fine. And I know we're gonna have a few other questions as we go on here that might lead into this as well, so we can come back to that.
It all centers on the player character knows their character best, and the GM trusts the player. So that issue shouldn't happen. Or if the GM's like, oh, I wonder why that's happening. If you trust the player and there's a reason, often the player will have a reason for knowing, and you just don't know the reason yet. And it can make for a really cool moment when you figure it out.
All right, let's move on over. Doc, did you want to ask anything, or should I move over to Timothy to answer the question?
No, that's all.
Okay.
I'm in agreement there.
All right, Timothy, many believe that metagaming... Oh, I'm reading the second question. Hold on. We'll come back up to the question you're supposed to answer now. How do you personally define metagaming in your tabletop sessions, and what do you believe is its most significant impact on the overall flow of play?
So there's two types of metagaming. There's the metagaming that you're using outside knowledge to alter or to direct what your character does and control how the path of the adventure goes. That's more common in if you do an adventure and you know what's coming up in an adventure, things of that nature. And there's also internal world specific. It's not really metagaming that such as Phil the Thrill has mentioned, but understanding how the various monsters will react and how you react and plan to those monsters. And I believe that would be limited mostly to early level creatures, meaning like 1 through 5, maybe 1 through 8 of your common opponents like orcs, goblins, gnolls, things like that. You know, those common everyday monsters that you've been trained on. So you know that goblin's going to be weak and a troll's going to be weak to fire because they've encountered time and time again. They're a mass out there. So you have these tactics to deal with that. And that to me would be an acceptable use of metagaming. But you know, if you're going through a module and somebody goes, "I'm going to go check that wall. Give me a perception check." I failed it. I'm going to check that spot on the wall. You failed a perception check. No, stop it. and that's not acceptable form of metagaming.
Do you think metagaming, I'm going to use your scenario a little bit here. Do you think metagaming like that can be kind of held into check by having the game master, dungeon master roll some of those roles?
It can, but the more effective method would be for the GM or the DM to actually change things up. Say, okay, sure, you go check that wall. It's a wall, but there's something there that it's a wall. Move on. So change
When
it
you
up.
say, you mean like change a module?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, change what take what their knowledge is and make it irrelevant because now they can't trust what they know, what they believe they know should be happening. It's like if they know the
I got
weakness
what
of
you're saying.
this bad guy is this, not anymore. It's not.
Okay. So when do you think that simple tabletop becomes metagaming, and how do you differentiate between the two?
The it's going to be primarily around of how an opponent's going to interact with especially against certain creatures if they know this dragon's weakness without having to do any research, without doing the legwork to get to it, then that would have a negative effect that the GM's going to have to either talk to the player or adjust that fight or both.
What about when you got a player at the table and he says, if you cast this other spell, you'd actually do more damage?
That's I would, yes, that's metagaming. That would be banter between the players. I could see that, especially if they're away from the table. It's just players saying, hey, to get them to think how their spells interact with each other or how it interacts with the world. If they're saying that in characters, then there's going to have to be a penalty of some kind because that a fighter is not going to know how the majority of spells are going to work.
In a very generic sense, then you feel that metagaming needs to be punished.
Then if it's a negative metagaming, there needs to be some form of consequence. If it's positive metagaming, like, all right, here's a goblin, here's a troll, wizard, fire the crap out of it. That's good metagaming because that would be something that the character would know and knows that wizards generally have fire, so fire the crap out of it. So yeah, accept that. But if it's that's why I differentiate. There's good metagaming and there's bad metagaming.
Okay. You guys want to ask Timothy anything related to what he said? Okay. It's going to be the fastest segment whenever.
You go first, Doc. Of course, you have a question.
Well, I mean, as far as player behavior in metagaming goes, there are two things I keep in mind. One, as a game master, the laws of reality are at your whim. And two, player characters are flammable.
That almost hit the keyboard.
I wanted to say it's kind of about how I guess there's some sort of module example you were giving where they know something's up with the wall. I didn't quite understand that.
Just an example.
Okay. So I would say that metagaming kind of is in opposition to things like your setting integrity. And because like as a GM, something that I like to I've been interested about. I don't have really firm opinions about metagaming yet, so I'm hoping to get some in this game. So just so we're all clear, I'm not standing on a house of stone. I don't know, is that a word? Anyways, something that's really important to me is character independence and like the GM's independence. And what I mean, a character's independence is like, are you doing things that your character would do separate from what the other players are up to or separate from your own player knowledge? I think metagaming is basically the opposite of that. And for the GM version is what I call setting integrity. So the GM is going to have this idea as to what's happening in the world and motivations of these characters and stuff. And now I don't run modules, so this is probably different if someone just knows exactly what everything is. But if a player comes in and they come up with a solution that happens to trigger a really good outcome for them, I'm not going to switch it up. I'm just going to kind of let that happen because I want them to understand my setting. And the same thing goes for when they fumble a roll and they're about to eat it. I'm not going to change my setting around or change the rule just so they don't die. Like I'll kill them off and let them. They have to respect the danger of my setting. They have to respect everything that my world's integrity is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and that's correct. You know, if they stumble upon something, you know, if you're dealing with people that you know haven't read the module, and
I
they
guess that's
stumble upon
module.
it,
Sorry.
or in any other, even if you're not using a module, like my game that I'm running, it's definitely a lot of it's in the book, but it's not pre-thought out, you know. And if they stumble across something beneficial, then reward them. But that's not metagaming. That's them being their characters.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if they're saying that, for example, my players are in Dinosaur Swamp, and they're like, "We're going to go to freaking Tallahassee, and we're going to go find Archie 2." No, you're not, because you don't know anything about Archie 2 or Archie 0 or whatever Archie it is. No. So
the reason why those things are so important to me is because I don't want players doing things out of context, or things that don't make sense, because the best thing I get out of a role-playing game is when a plan comes together or when a goal is achieved. And if I have had all of these outside influences helping me along the way or something, then that feeling is diminished. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm trying to get that super big dopamine hit when I finally, become lord of a manor. So I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but so that's why I don't want a bunch of metagaming in my game. Is what I'm trying to say.
No, I understand, Phil. The 4D folks, you have this, the social contract, and you spend a lot of time dealing, vetting your players and so forth. But
not a lot of time, but yeah.
Well, in talking in the past, with Shauner and more recently with Rick Crispy and Mr. Max, vetting comes up a lot as a concept. So I don't know if this is going to pertain to you so much.
Yeah.
But can a certain amount of metagaming help newer players engage with the game more effectively?
Are you asking me?
It's for all of you, but I'll start with you since you're last to talk.
I would say that metagaming hurts new players because a new player is often much more assumes that role-playing games are what they are described to be, and that is you can do whatever you want. You're going to be in a world playing your character, and you just play your character. People get told that all the time, and then they come to the game, and then everyone's like, "No, do this. No, do this. No, do this." And then it's like, "Oh, what?" So I'm not.
Well, let me give you an example, and honestly, I'm doing this to probe because I'm honestly curious about this. So this isn't to say that any of the three panelists here have given me a bad answer. All right, so you're sitting at the table, you're imagining the scene, and now the new player, because new players do what new players do, cast that proverbial fireball in the 10 by 10 room, but he doesn't say anything out loud to the other characters. He's just himself like, "Oh, I'm going to cast fireball." And all the players at the table like, "No!" And so let's just arbitrarily say, "Hey, did you know that thing has a 30-foot volume?" No, don't do that.
I gotcha.
Good, bad, otherwise.
So that's like the go ahead.
A brand new player that doesn't know this stuff, I would let people like talk them down from stuff like that.
Get them off the ledge.
But also because if the character was like a magic using character, they would understand that. So I mean,
that's fair.
Yes.
But you also have to let people like learn consequences. I remember I had a young kid that played the game with us, and he did a lot of like crazy things. Like, I want to teleport 10 miles away into that forest, the very dense forest.
Have you
have
ever
never
been there?
to, that you've only seen from a distance. And I'll just kind of lay the facts out. And if he says yes, like, all right. You're gonna learn now. Why don't do that? It's like the guy who same character. One of his friends got all chopped up. He put the bits. He wanted to resurrect him. We were playing D. He's walking to the city gates with a big burlap sack full of this guy's chopped up limbs, and the guards are there. They're checking people's packages. They're doing a customs inspection. And I made this very clear what was going on. He's like, okay, yeah, wait my turn. Like, sir, may we have a look at that bloody sack? And he was shocked that he got arrested.
No, I'm going to resurrect him. It's okay.
Stuff like that, you got to let people learn, where the bounds of reality are and whatever given situation are. But a brand new player doesn't understand the parameters of spell, I'll let people correct that. That's not a problem. And with modules, I haven't run modules in a long time since second edition D&D. We ran a game that was mainly modules because we had multiple game masters. So we basically ran modules, but we'd always ask, did you play this before? But if that case, and I thought somebody told me they hadn't played a module and very quickly became apparent they did play that module, we could start improvising and go all two horror hits here real fast.
When I was younger, and I mean much younger, like junior high, senior high, if we knew that a game master was going to run a certain module, we'd go out and buy it. We were young. We were young and dumb. But
to answer your follow-up question there, Max, there's two. I think that there's two levels of acceptable metagaming to help new players out, and I've had this problem even with my wife. There's helping somebody understand how the mechanics of the game, mechanics of the spell works. There's also telling somebody how they need to do things. And that's where the GM has to step up and say, calm down, let them do what they want to do. Explaining how it works is one thing, but telling them you need to do this and then this and this and this, no. And this is, so that's one of the roles of the GMs to officiate, to make sure that somebody doesn't overrun and effectively play two characters.
Okay. All right. Any shape rounds, anything that you guys want to follow up on with regard to, really, we're still just kind of defining what it is. Anything else you guys want to add to this before we move on to the next question?
Can I answer the follow-up question?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
So it's kind of like giving a baby a nuke. You know what I mean? So it's not a good idea. I would say if a player doesn't know how to play a wizard, then they probably should look into it. And but the answer to almost all the problems is role-playing. So if they're about to cast a fireball, there's probably a verbal component. Someone nearby might go, or maybe a familiar could go, yeah, let's blast them. Let's blast them all. And they're like, oh, I mean, skippity boom. And then I change it. And then, I don't know. That's how I would do it. But I would totally make him blow up everyone, because that sounds like a fun adventure shortly after that.
Here's what I'll tell you is the typical result of that.
Yeah.
It's fun for the game master.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes fun for the player who did it, especially if the player is like, oh, I completely messed it up. You know who it's not fun for? The other players sitting at the table who actually care about their characters.
Surprise one shot.
And what's that?
It's a surprise one shot.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm generally in agreement with you guys on all of that. So let's baby's first nuke.
Pro killing your players, just so we're clear. I mean characters. Oops.
It's just one half as the other.
Yeah.
Although as a game master, few things are more amusing than when the rest of the party decides that they're going to do an impromptu blanket party for the guy who just got everyone killed.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an awesome role-playing opportunity too.
Entertain me.
Hazes the hell out of the wizard. Maybe kills him back at camp. Be awesome. I like it when my characters die. I feel like that's the most fun part of a game, is when I get to do my death scene. So I might think things differently than y'all. Also, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, our next segment is going to be on metagaming as a tool for strategy and efficiency. Uh-oh. Are we going to talk about how you can actually use it in the game for something beneficial? Does anybody agree? Who knows? We'll find out here in just a moment. But let's knock out. We only got one super chat. Nobody's watching tonight. That's sad. Such a great topic. Mercurius, because I'm not going to say say this long. My ear trumpet has been struck by lightning. There you go. I said it. For $2 Australian, which I'm sure is worth a postage stamp. He says, read me too. So I read you too. There you go. That mail was worth it, sir. It's good to see you, Mercurius.
These are like meta super chats.
I know, right?
Smart.
Metagaming, meta super chat.
Yeah, but I'm out of character when I do this, right? Sort of. No, I'm not. All right. Do you want to join? If you think you have some presence and charisma, the ability to educate and entertain, a good AV setup free from noise pollution, and an interest in discussing tabletop RPGs in this format, join the Some Rando RPG Live. Oh, this is Some Rando. Oh my God. That's what happens when I read a script. Join the Game Master Insight Discord. Link is in the description. How did this not get changed? To stay tuned for future topics. Help us get to know you, and maybe we'll get you on the show to talk about your experiences. That's right. We went through a name change at the beginning of the year. It's not the Rando Stream anymore. It is now Game Master Insight. And of course, if you enjoy this discussion, please like this video, subscribe to all of the panelist channels, which you can find in the description. Okie dokie. Now we start with, it's going to start with Timothy Fraley, but he stepped away. Okay. All right, well, I guess I'll start with Doc then. I think he was scared. He was scared of being the kid called first in class. You know how that goes. Oh, he's back. Okay, I was going to have to give you a demerit, but since you're back. All right, Timothy, we're starting with you. And our topic for this segment is metagaming as a tool for strategy and efficiency. So many people believe that metagaming can optimize combat tactics and game flow. Others feel it lessens immersion. How do you personally weigh the strategic benefits of metagaming against its potential drawbacks?
Look, if you're especially low level characters, for like levels 1 through 5, maybe 1 through 8 at most, you were trained. Tell me any trainer that does not give you real world examples of what happens. You'd never go out with a brand new job saying, you know what? I know what I'm supposed to do, but I've never seen this before, or I don't even know, because the trainers they're going to teach you. Here comes goblins. They're weak, but they're easy to dispatch. They generally attack like this, or trolls are normally weak against fire, things of that nature. It's all in line with what is the character supposed to know. Friggin' the spellcasters, wizards, they know how their spells work. They know what their spells do. They're generally supposed to know that a fireball is going to take up 30 feet of space, and depending on your specialty, you might be able to put a pocket in there to help protect your allies. So that way you can use this knowledge to develop the tactics to defeat your opponents easily and not be too afraid, not die in the first 2 fragging levels because you're freaking a weak wizard. So it can be a good thing, and it's use it. We have brains, we learn. Our characters have brains, they learn. Use it.
Yeah, to an extent, you have to substitute in real world outside knowledge of what's going on for the fact that you're dealing with professionals at this. So they're going to have knowledge and skills that you don't necessarily as the player have. So these things kind of balance each other out, I think, to a great extent. It's all a question of having clear boundaries.
And this is also mainly focused, if we're focusing on just fantasy, then you're going to be familiar with your immediate area. But as you progress in technology in the game, like for example, you do a Traveler's game. Guess what they have? It's called the internet. Use it. So now, are you going to know absolutely everything about any specific creature? Not necessarily. Some things might change, or guess what else is out there because of the internet? Actual freaking quote unquote trolls who are going to make shit up, and you're not going to you may not get the right information. Say, oh, that's an ice troll. They're weak against electricity. No, that didn't work out. I mean, so you can even use that against the players and have a little bit of fun. But they still have that opportunity to do the research, to do the legwork of getting the information that they need for their opponents. That's why dragons, they're unfortunately are just so rare that any encounters with them became legends. So yeah, and so starting off fantasy, you're probably going to know your meted area. As you progress in time, you can get information easier.
So you talked about Traveler, talked a little bit about fantasy. I'll dive down this a little bit more. Does metagaming vary as a whole, or in a general sense, with different genres or settings? And
I think
okay.
Sorry.
I was just going to say after that, which one do you think lends towards metagaming more, or good metagaming?
So yeah, it will vary depending on the genre, because if dealing with a fantasy, there's actually another 2 layers here. Metagaming is like onions, layers upon the layers. Your normal fighter, your normal wizard, they're going to know their immediate area opponents. If they're forestry, they're going to know the goblins. They're going to know the orcs, whatever opponents are immediately in that area. Whereas if then you take them off into a desert, they're not going to know the big giant scorpion. They're not going to know the giant that's living out there because they can't. The information doesn't travel as easily. Now, as a ranger might know even more details about if they have a preferred opponent, or if anybody has a preferred opponent, or depending on if there's a lore skill that's focused. Somebody with lore fairies will know more about fairies than somebody with lore demons and monsters. So there's that aspect as well. As you progress in technology, they have the ability, the information flows easier, so they can do their research. It's easier to do the research. You can go to libraries. You can go online. Depending on what age you're in. If you're in the 1920s, yes, they're going to have public libraries. So you go to the public library and you look up these ancient arcane books on these legends of these creatures or these spells that you're researching or whatnot. You get into modern age, you got fast internet. You go into the future, you've got quantum computing to help, and that makes translations easier, makes so you don't need to worry about, I can't read it. Well, let's just float up this Linux translation app or OS and feed that in, and here's an AI. It can translate it as well. So yeah, as you get more technology progress, it does get easier to find the information, and it takes you less time too.
Okay.
If you can find more information in on a quantum computer going on 1 week to your next destination traveler than you can an entire year on Faerun for D&D.
All right, let me knock out a couple things here real quick because we got a $20 super chat that popped in. Thank you very much, Squirrel Hermit. He gets to interrupt the show for this. It says, metagame can give the session a video game feel. Definite loss of immersion. I think in most cases, he's right. I'm sure, I don't want to say all because I'm usually pretty puritanical about stuff, but I'm sure I can think of times when metagaming, like, again, we talked about new players and so forth, and I like to be a little more flexible with brand new players. But generally speaking, I agree with Squirrel Hermit here, and also agree with this $20. Thank you very much. There's one more I also want to read here because I forgot it in the first segment because I can't put it up on the screen over here. Grizzly Beardo for $5 on Rumble during the first segment said, it's tough dealing with unconscious metagaming. Example, a player aborts an ambush because he knows that he fails the prowl roll, even though the PC wouldn't know the roll failed. And this is why I'm a strong believer, and they talked about it over there in Rumble. That's why I'm a strong believer in Game Master rolling certain aspects of of the
Oh,
dice.
absolutely. Like perception rolls, things
Yeah.
like that. I'll sometimes roll for no reason just to make them think they missed something.
Yep.
I'm a huge fan of that.
That is such a red herring that works so well. Yes, absolutely. Hold on a second. Okay. What was that? I'm checking my packs. I'm looking to the left. I'm climbing the highest mountain.
And random, are you sure you want to do that?
I was just pre-rolling the treasure for the next encounter in case you had it, but you guys do what you're gonna do.
I don't have a problem with people knowing their prowl roll sucks if they rolled it.
What's that?
If it's contested, then that's something else. Like you're making the secret contested roll, but I don't have a problem with someone knowing they rolled like crap. Like they should be able to play that.
Point of
they role play it. They say, "Oh, I stepped on a twig," or
no. How does the person? I hear what you're saying, but how does the person know he failed?
How does he know he failed? So usually a prowl is going to be contested.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't, but he knows if he rolled poorly, so he can say, "Oh, He can be concerned that he rolled poorly.
A lot of times, so one of the things we did in the military is we let people pass us.
Mm-hmm.
So you failed, but we let you pass us because we know that if we came out right away and identified the fact that, we caught you, then you have all the people behind you or whatever setup you've got going on. But if we let the first group pass, the second group will come and then we take them out. So, awesome. So my point with that is, I hear what you're saying, and that's a nice way to keep things going. But if the player, you know how players are, and again, I understand the 4D concept is you really, really, really have to trust your players. But
I also know how players are.
Right.
But also, it could be, for example, let's say you got players ransacking somebody's room while they're distracted, looking for something. What if it's not actually there? You don't necessarily want them to know whether they failed or it's just not there.
Do you mean like if they do a sort of investigate check?
Yeah. Suppose they're looking for a document that they suspect this person has. He's actually got it on him, but they're looking in his room. I could say, okay, it's not here, but I might just, because they were rushing, well, you didn't find it. In fact, it was never there. They were never going to find it. I might want to keep that secret.
Well, if they roll, I guess investigate is kind of a weird one because why would you investigate poorly? You know what I mean? So, but you should be able to say, "Oh, I looked that place up and down." I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes you look someplace up and down, it's still right in your face, and that's also another reason why when people get.
How many times have you lost your keys in your pockets?
All the time.
This is a totally different topic about perfect and imperfect information.
That's fair.
It's a huge topic.
That's why also when somebody's doing like perception checks or something of that nature, a lot of times I'll say it looks clear. So whether or not they pass or fail, they think it looks clear. Whether or not something happens, they don't know.
Yep. Just like insight, you never tell someone. Well, this is a totally different topic too, but whenever someone fails an insight, you don't tell them they think the opposite. You just don't tell them anything. Just be like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to derail this, but I mean, I'm one of the people that believes that if somebody looks in an area, they find it. Like that. Like I don't I hate perception checks. What's the other one? Was it spot checks? Whatever. I don't like those things. I know they exist in some games. If the note's in the drawer and you search the drawer, you find it. My only caveat to that is this:
I agree.
Anybody under duress, you've got 1 round to look at that because you know that door is about to break. And if the person's like, "I'm still trying to find this note," then I'd have a roll. Other than that, if he says something like, "I grab every paper, everything in there, and we're just running out," well, then you're going to get it. It just there are nuances like that, but I'm ultimately of the minds that if you look in the area, because one of the things I hate, and I learned this a long time ago, but I love that Free League really promotes this in their games, is that you got to keep the pardon the word here, but you got to keep the story going. Got to keep the adventure going. Don't stop it just because somebody failed the one roll. Not to be fair, you should always have multiple solutions to problems, but the one roll. And so, bringing this back on metagaming, let's keep going through with that scenario. All right, the person failed the perception check to find the document in the drawer, but the player, the player's like, dude, it's in here. I know it's in here. I know I rolled like crap. How do you get around that? Or do you care? This is for everybody.
I suppose it would depend. Sorry. I suppose it would depend on what you needed to move the story forward. I'm a big proponent of failing forward in games, where if something needs to keep moving along and they screwed it up, you let it happen, but impose some condition. So, like, for example, try to pick a lock they just can't get through. You need them to get through. Okay, you don't open it, but somebody comes through the other side and now wants to bust your skull open. Or you open it, but you broke your lock picks now. You can always do something like that to move things along if you need to.
I think that you pretty much had the solution, Max. It's if the only time you would ever roll that is if there's a time crunch. That's why taking a 20 is a thing. So all that you shouldn't have to roll if you have all the time in the world. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm one of those firm believers that there's 2 times you roll or you only roll dice when these 2 conditions are met. Yeah. The outcome is uncertain, and the meaningfulness or of the outcome is important.
Right, if those two, if you're going to stay there until you find what you know is there,
right?
Yeah,
you find it. Let's move on. Maybe you roll to see how long it takes.
So to slide back onto the metagaming here, I think a lot of these follow-up questions are because I was expecting somebody with a little more wargamey mentality to be on the show, but we'll keep going with them because remember, this video is for everybody out there, so it's not just for me. Do you see a difference? And this is a follow-up question for who was I asking the question? Are we still on Timothy?
Timothy. Yeah.
You know what? Forget it. We're going to go to the main question for Doc, and I'll just ask this follow-up question to you. So many believe metagaming can optimize combat tactics and game flow, while others feel it lessens immersion. How do you personally weigh the strategic benefits of metagaming against its potential drawbacks?
Since you bring up wargaming, that's I think if you're dealing with mass combat situations and you're dealing with a map and fog of war, that's where things like that become more of an issue. Like, do they know about the archers off in the woods over there? But stuff like that can become an issue. But in those kind of situations, I think you just got to be judicious about the information you allow out there to begin with.
What about
the only real answer to that?
Well, what about, and this is a scenario I've posted or mentioned a lot of times, the scenario, and this is why I hate battle maps, especially starting with 3rd edition and beyond, where the person's like, okay, I know, drop fireball template. That the fireball ends right here, 1 inch from my nose. Ha, I don't take any damage from it. But you're literally at the end of a 5,000 degree fireball, where it's like, yeah, but the tactics say I can go right here and I know I'm perfectly safe. I find, to me, that is absolutely immersion breaking. Because, well, I won't get into what I do because, talk about that later, but.
They're not having eyebrows at the end.
Right. But do you see something like that as, no, that's just part of playing the game? Because remember, it is still a game. Or do you see that as that's kind of pushing the envelope too much, even though it's codified in the rules?
I think I'd never use proper battle maps. I might draw out a diagram of what's going on. But in that case, if people were being that, it depends how you want to approach it. Like if you're doing it as a skirmish game, if that's the mentality of the group, then I have no problem with that. But in more of a role playing session, this is more an approximation of the area. So maybe it ends right there, and maybe back here somewhere.
Yeah, so
Are you
so
sure?
what I do is I do a saving throw for somebody who wants to be right on the edge. Again, because I'm very similar to you. I do abstract maps, like you're about here, here's the river, here's the hills, whatever, either on a whiteboard or whatnot. And it's like, I want to be right at the edge of that. I know he said that it's got a 30-foot radius for the fireball, so I'm going to be about 30 feet away. All right, make a save. Well, but I'm not supposed to be in the circle. Make a save. All right, if you succeed, you are outside of it. If you fail, you're going to take the half damage. Yeah. Just to say that you're not sure. If you would have said that you were 40 feet away, or if you would have said that you're going to stop at the brush line, knowing full well that he doesn't want to catch those brushes, the brush on fire or whatever, wouldn't have been a problem. But when you try to micro it to that point, there's got to be some sort of risk reward in there, in my opinion. That's why I hate.
Just point out there's no hexes on the floor.
Right.
It's you don't see a hex. You think this is about that far. Maybe it isn't.
I feel I kind of view those things as like burning hands. Like your hands aren't burning, and when you cast burning hands,
okay,
it's kind of like your burning hands of fireball. It's just how I. That's how
I see what you're saying. Well, I view that differently, but I get what you're saying. Yeah,
that's in the middle and it explodes out. Yeah, it's different, but.
I understand. I see it as like a jet of flame that comes out of his hands. Like his hands aren't on fire, but I understand what you're saying. So yeah, game masters can absolutely rule that a different way and not care that you're right at the edge of it. I can understand that. So Doc, do you see a difference between strategic planning among players and overt metagaming, or do you consider them part of the same concept?
It depends how it's handled. If they're doing it in a stress combat situation and they're like sitting there working out detail plans, I won't tolerate. Unless it's something they could be doing in that situation. I'll put a stop to that. It's like, you guys don't have the time to have this conversation right now. People are
all right, Doc. I know that your lightning bolt will bounce off the wall here. So what I need you to do is we're going to get the skeletons all stuck in the. Okay, skeletons are a bad one to use when it comes to lightning bolt. We'll go with it. There you go. See, I metagame poorly. We'll get skeletons all in a row here, and then you hit that lightning bolt, and you'll hit them twice.
Yeah, I would. If two players were doing that, I would have interrupted that right there. It's like, okay, you guys are having this conversation, and meanwhile, Bob comes over and is like hitting you both over the head with a sledgehammer because you decide to have a chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so that stuff like that, I'll just stomp on. I mean, if it's something, that's the stuff that the player should be discussing before, sword starts swinging. And a little bit, if it's something they could just like shout out real quick, then, fine. But if they start like making detailed, intricate plans in a stress situation where that wouldn't be possible, then I'll interrupt. Okay, you guys are screwing around. You're indecisive.
Okay.
Kill them.
One of the things that I will do, and I know I'm interjecting a lot with this one, but I'm trying to add to the conversation where other facets of a metagaming go, is let's say I'm playing a fighter type character in a semi-high magic world, not something where magic is just completely behind the scenes, but where we know that magic exists. I'll always assume that the caster can throw some sort of fireball, whatever that happens to be. And I don't personally have a problem if a player does that. Dude, throw a fireball. Now, of course, if the guy doesn't have fireball, I don't have it. Come on, everybody. You're a wizard. Every wizard has fireball, right? It's kind of a role-playing thing. But if you're out there and going, hey, did you know that shocking grasp can do yada yada? It's like, whoops, time out. How many necromancers have you been around? Or whatever. So some like the more common tropey things, I might let them get by with. But when it comes to like really, I wouldn't call them unique. None of those spells are unique. Unique ways of using spell. Like, hey, wizard, if you throw grease on the ground and then use burning hands, we could light them all up. How? Wait, first of all, grease on the ground. Who's got a pitcher of grease? No, he's got the spell. Yeah. I guess my point is I try to draw the line in there myself to attack because I want them to think tactically. Wouldn't it make sense to use fire against a bunch of spider webs?
Yeah, I mean, but I
That
think it's
metagaming, though?
yeah, it all just comes down to do they have time to have this conversation while this is
Fair.
going on? If they do, by all means, like if you could say, put down grease and we'll light it on fire. Okay, you could just like say that real quick. That I wouldn't have a problem with. But also, Nicholas brought up an interesting thing in the chat. If you're throwing around fireballs, does that wand of fireballs have a laser sight on it, or you just kind of would you trust somebody to just throw a grenade in an indoor environment?
Right, so
I should be outside the blast range.
this is one of the things that I've actually talked, and when I was much, much younger, kind of tested it. But to be fair, we were young, and I don't know how good of a test that actually counts. Go to a field, not a field with lines on it. I've seen them do it. A professional football player can throw, you tell him to throw 50 yards, he can hit almost right in that 50-yard line perfectly because he's thrown tens of thousands of footballs and can do that. They can throw those things in little small circles that are moving back and forth. Absolutely get that. But remove all the lines from a field. Remove and just open space. I want you to throw this baseball exactly 200 feet. Now, the counter to that, to be fair to the people who want to say this, is, well, it's magic, and that's just part of the magic that's built into it. There should be no problem with going 200 feet. That's going to be up to you and your table and your game. I don't allow that.
Magic gives you VATS overlay every time.
If that's, and I know you're being somewhat facetious on that, but it is absolutely something that somebody can just assume at the table if you don't want to deal with that. I personally don't like that. I would be like, no, if you want to throw that fireball and say, I'm throwing it in that gaggle of orcs that are over there, I'm generally going to let you do that because of whether it's a grenade or a baseball or bat guano wrapped around sulfur, and you want to throw that to that spot, as long as it's within range, I think you can do that. But if you remove all markers, all range finders, all whatever, good luck with that. So getting that exact center, maybe not. But getting it in that gaggle, sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But, I've also seen Joe Montana throw 5 interceptions in a game, too. So,
well, that could just be good defense, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's why Theater of the Mind is pretty much solves that. Right?
Yeah, that's I think is very much the solution to all that.
Like, there's a couple over there. Okay.
Then you don't get into like the grid square arguments because that is just tedious. That nothing will derail a game quicker than getting an argument going over exact measurements and things like that. Especially when you're dealing with a combat situation where you don't have time to be checking all this stuff. And
it makes it way slower too.
Yeah, and it's just going to drag it out.
Well, most of the time it does, but wouldn't you also say it depends on the era that you're playing in? For example, you're playing in near future or far future, where you have big giant robots with terrain scanning technologies. You're going to have that information. And you have in helmet radios that you can say, "Hey, Paul, drop a grenade at this coordinates," and you can mark on the freaking send a command to mark where it wants to go, and they can erase.
So you're obviously not talking about BattleTech because nothing is that precise in BattleTech.
Yeah.
But
That's a good point.
If you're in a near future or far future and you have that technology, then it makes perfect sense that it would happen. You can say, put it here, and like you said, they will put it there because they will have that overlay. They will have those measurements.
Yeah, you got to. It depends entirely on the situation you're dealing with.
On the age, yeah.
All right. And by the way, I think that's a really strong point that anybody watching the video should hang their hat on, is the fact that we've been I've been throwing a lot of fantasy anecdotes there, but when it comes to a far future or even a more modern type game, I mean, don't get me wrong, no weapon is perfect, but they are a lot more accurate than. Well, I hope this rock that I'm flinging out of this wooden structure, with rope torque and tension on it gets to where I want it to go, right? But let's get let's get Phil the Thrill in here to finally be able to answer the question. So back to the main question, which is many believe metagaming can optimize combat tactics and game flow, while others feel it lessens immersion. How do you personally weigh the strategic benefits of metagaming against its potential drawbacks?
So as far as tactics go, I would say I don't really. I don't like the out of character anything. So whenever you're making plans, it has to be in character, and it's way more fun if you're actually role playing your combats. So I highly recommend everyone do that. The one thing I would say that metagaming can do better than not metagaming, and I don't know if you want it, maybe it isn't better even, but metagaming kind of facilitates those like movie scenes that you can't really do unless you metagame, where like someone saves you at the last minute. You know what I mean? That doesn't really happen unless it's contrived. So I don't really know if you want that. Or it's a lot.
No,
I would say
absolutely.
it's a
Please.
lot less likely to happen if it's contrived.
So to be clear, this isn't about everybody loves, everybody hates it. So if there's a use for metagaming in there, go ahead and point that. Yeah, tell us a little more about that for the folks who are watching.
For the folks at home. All right. So basically, like if you've split the party, which you should, and you're up in the upstairs, and something's like decided the smoke monster has decided it's gonna start sucking your soul out quietly. Maybe there's some choking involved, and then someone's downstairs searching the kitchen, and they're like, maybe I should go back upstairs to see how Phil's doing. And then they go upstairs, and right before I die, they're like, hey, get out of here. And they turn the fan on, or I don't know what to do. Anyways, so you don't get that as often unless you metagame, but it's also super lame when it happens. So like if I say, I'm going to go upstairs and check on Phil, or someone says that, because I'm Phil. And the next round, the GM says, oh, the smoke monster appears and he starts choking you out. Well, now they've already set into the motion that thing's going to happen. And it's going to feel way more awesome when the player does it on their own without out-of-game knowledge when they come in and rescue me. You see the difference? Like one of them you give a crap about. The other one's just something that doesn't matter. And it's going to make those really awesome moments of story generation that comes as a byproduct of good roleplay. And it's going to make them stick out a lot.
Oh, you muted yourself.
We lost you there.
Or unplugged your microphone.
It's going to make them stick
Phil,
out
there you go. Okay, we can
guys?
hear you now. Yep, we got you.
There we got you.
Okay, good. It's going to make those moments stick out a lot better in the players' minds is basically what I'm saying. The knowing the monster thing, I guess that's kind of how tactics work. What Timothy was describing was all of the ways you can know the monster without metagaming. So contextually, if it makes sense, then that means your character knows, and it's not metagaming, in my opinion. So all those things you're describing, I would say, aren't metagaming. It's just good role playing. And something that happened to me that was kind of bad metagaming, I thought, is I was playing in this game with this guy. Anyways, who cares? Anyways, he's the GM, and he puts this giant stone monster. It's basically like a rock golem. It's just like made purely of rock, and we're fighting it. And he just keeps describing how his swords just bounce off of it, and it's like barely doing anything and all this stuff. And so we're like, well, swords don't work against rocks, guys, so maybe we should just run. And then he says, as if you guys don't know how D&D works, and he just has hit points. And I'm just like, I guess that's true. Because we're basically doing damage. He's just a big hit point sponge, right? And so so I felt like that kind of metagamey, like of system knowledge almost, can kind of hurt you a little bit. I know that's kind of a stretch, but those moments where maybe it would have been a really fun scene that was happening organically, where we were going to try to run away from this monster, or we were going to try and come up with some other way to handle giant stone golem. But the GM insisted on metagaming and telling us, okay, well, you're actually doing damage. Just so you know, you're doing damage, guys. You know what I mean?
Could you have described that by saying chunks of rock fell off or something?
Exactly. Like he should have described it better.
Yeah, that's
I don't know why I brought that up. That's just something that stuck in my head.
No, that would just be bad GMing there.
It's a bad GMing.
Yeah, if a player did that, I would punish them for that. It's like, okay, you know what? You're not.
Oh,
actually
like
doing
they're
damage
like,
now.
guys,
Okay,
it's hit points and AC, guys. We got this. Don't worry about it.
yeah, that you get
Everyone's
slammed
just
for.
everyone's just hit points and AC. It's not.
So I'm glad you said that. I was going to ask this question to Phil. Phil, I'm still asking this to you, but Doc, I would like your take on this after he answers. And by the way, Timothy, I'm probably going to ask something similar to this to Kevin on Sunday. What do you think about players who know? Let's just go with the hit point thing. I've got 100 hit points. Your weapon can only do 2d6 damage. I'm going to let you hit me so that I can do something. In Palladium, it's simultaneous attack. In D&D, it's just like, I don't care if you hit me. I'm going to do this thing no matter what, because you can't kill me no matter what you do.
Right. So numbers on a sheet are symbolic of what the reality of the game is. So I should my character should have the knowledge that I'm pretty much invulnerable to whatever you're about to do. So I should get to do that because my character knows he's not in any danger. So I don't care about your stupid weapon because I'm strong. That should be what the character does. It's totally in character and it's totally fine.
Yeah, I have a completely opposite opinion of that one. Well, let me phrase it. I think it absolutely depends on the setting. A superhero game, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But a fantasy game where it's where I'm just a fighter wearing armor,
yeah.
I will literally change the rules to make it like, look, if you are not going to actively defend yourself and act like this is a fight, then he's going to get a free shot and it's going to be a critical. And I have a critical chart. So
if I could still eat your critical, then I still don't care.
Well, what I might do in that situation, if like say played AD&D, it's like, oh, let's call this an assassination. Just look up the assassin rules. Okay,
well, then you are.
He's got a chance of offing you right off the bat.
In that situation, you are changing the integrity of your setting to fit what you want to happen. I would say that the system has decided the tone of your game in that situation, and you are basically playing in some cartoon world. And you're in an anime where someone slashes at you, it makes sparkies, and you go, ah! It's not real, where there's like a lethal cut going down across you and pouring blood out. You're playing in a different world than you think you are.
I kind of agree with Phil, and I'm not a 4D player, but I kind of agree with Phil. The numbers on the sheet are just for our benefit, but our characters would know. If I'm a fighter, I'm a freaking 10th level fighter. I can take a punch, I can take a stab. I've taken plenty of stabs, and this is not a threat to me. So,
well, we also get into the debate that has never been solved by anyone, to my knowledge, of exactly what in the game like D&D hit points actually are. Mm-hmm. Because is that large hit point pool, in fact, considering the fact that you are dodging?
So the answer is social contract. You establish what you want hit points to mean, right? Especially in this type of game where it's like, you're a huge bullet sponge. We're going to be playing combat for 2 hours, guys. Get ready. But like how you want to show what happens. So if someone's stabbing me, it's my responsibility to at least role play the effect of it. And if it's going to do 2 damage to my 100 STC, then my response isn't, oh, it's killing me. It's going to be like, oh no, it chipped off a little something on my arm. I don't know what the hell's. What's 2 damage on 100 STC even look like? Nothing. You scratched my paint.
Yeah, and that's why, by my opinion, the STC hit points component in Palladium is actually very well, and they explained it very well, saying, that's STC is your ability to take the hit. All
the John Wayne.
The John Wayne. Yeah. You take half a dozen shots and you're still standing. You're bleeding all to hell, but you're still standing, and you're able to get those shots off to finish off the bad guys. And so it all depends on the system. D&D, you don't have that separate nomenclature, that separate function. So it's all in one component. It's both
So
your
let me use
health.
the Palladium construct then. So for Palladium, first of all, do you have the Compendium of Modern Weapons?
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
Yep.
Use the penetrate. Use those rules. That will enhance your game 1,000,000%. And we wouldn't have this question because you don't want to be stabbed even with a knife. But what I would do is I would have the damage direct to hit points then. And here's my take on that. Here's why. Again, now, how does this have to do with metagaming? It's a player using numbers on a character sheet, basically out of character knowledge, to facilitate in-character play. You're not using your SDC at that point. You're literally letting him stab you. You're literally letting him hit you with a polearm or shoot you. You're not, to me, and you guys can absolutely disagree. Matter of fact, you folks out there watching can absolutely disagree. Maybe you agree with Phil, what he said before. Your in-universe system dictates that what I'm about to say isn't right. I get it. It's your table. You do your thing. But for me, hit points represent that you are actually actively defending. That's how I look at it. So if you're just gonna be like, look, I'm gonna let him run me through with a sword and I'm gonna go get him because it can only do 2d6 damage, I'm rolling on my critical table, and my critical table does include, it's very rare, but does include instant death.
I'm not saying
You can
that
take that risk.
I'm not saying that the critical is the problem, because a critical makes total sense. If you're going to stand there and say, "Come at me, bro," they're going to take the best option, the best shot that they can. You know, when you change it up though to an assassination,
Yeah, but
or
so an
something else.
assassination's got this cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, that would when that example I'm using, I'm just saying, well, there's a chance he's just going to straight up kill you, and I would just use that as a quick reference.
System shock.
Yeah, so I mean, it's because if it's just pure, I can take this damage and shrug it off, then you run in the risk of turning it into like a Monty Python sketch where you're like walking around with a cup of coffee, reading the paper while people are like beating you with axes. It's like,
Now, but look at what Phil the Thrill said just a little bit ago. I mean, if that is the rules for the world, is it actually metagaming at that point, or is he just being a character in that setting as written?
well, if you're playing like that, but then you're kind of in a superhero game,
Sure.
At that point, which, if that's what you're doing, that's great. But I mean, I suppose it depends at the reality level that you established.
But Phil gave the answer: social contract.
Right here.
And I think a lot of us have that, even if we don't, have it formalized with, notaries and so forth. We either play with people we trust or know, or if we don't, we explain our setting and so forth. So I think most people have a type of social contract going in. Anybody who sits at my table might not know the specific rule that I'm going to adjudicate, but that I play a game that has risk reward, and I'm going to keep you poor, and you're going to work for everything. But when you get it, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to be happy you got it.
I love that. I would say I disagree with one of your points for sure. The character sheet should be in character knowledge, but it's not like you don't have the math as in character knowledge. You have an idea of where you are at, what your status is, and you should be role playing. If I have half my SDC gone, it should come across in my actions and in my role play. And I would say that maybe the solution, Max, is that you can role play be the solution in your world. So if I know someone's going to attack me, but I want to attack them at the same time, can I say, on my attack, though, I move to the side to try to make sure my armor catches the blow as I stab them simultaneously? Like, would that satisfy?
The problem is the simultaneous attack rule doesn't allow for that. That's the issue. Now, rules are rules, and you can do with them as you want.
That's effectively what's going to happen, right? If in rules as written as would be like,
is you literally take the hit in order to give your hit. Right. That's how it's written.
Well, I'm going to take the hit, but I want to like tilt my body a little bit so that it doesn't hit anything vital. Like, just describe the fact that I'm hoping it goes into my SDC. Like verbally. Does that not satisfy the?
I'd have to read the pedantry of the rule
because it sounds like you want respect for your attacks. You want respect for your world. I'm just trying to that's pay lip service to it as a solution.
I want to be very clear. I'm just putting this out here as food for thought. Yes, that is my way of doing it. But I want to be very clear that I don't care if Timothy uses simultaneous attack. I don't. I just don't even allow the rule in my game. Palladium has too much back and forth action reaction stuff that I'm not even going to entertain the idea of simultaneous attack. But I also have to understand, I don't run Rifts and I don't run Heroes Unlimited. I run TMNT and After the Bomb. So more After the Bomb. Very gritty, very more realistic, I guess you'd say, for lack of a better term. So that isn't something anybody would willingly want to do when you have 35 SDC. And to act like you would to me is like, you're insane.
Right. So then it would be fine if they only had 35 then. Probably. Right.
I mean,
you just don't allow the rule. That's fine.
Right. This is it's a simultaneous attack rule. I don't allow, right?
Palladium is a strange system, and how exactly you should be thinking about it.
It's a framework, and that's what I love about it. It's absolutely a framework system. So you can I don't want to say you can pick and choose, but it gives you the frame, and then from there you adjudicate. It's so much that so many people don't understand this because the books are that thick. Is that it's not like Pathfinder where it's an encyclopedia. It is a framework that gives you a whole bunch of ideas for how you can run your game. But Timothy's is going to be different than yours, which is going to be different than Phil's, Doc's, which is going to be different than mine, and we're all still playing the same game. And that's the way Kevin loves it.
Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning that Kevin really doesn't get why people don't house rule this game or something.
Yeah,
like you mentioned that once.
Yeah, well, it's funny because like I'll do stuff on our Discord. And I know I'm kind of derailing here a little bit, but I'll put things on our Discord like, hey, we want to ask Kevin some questions. Like he's coming on Sunday, we want to ask him some questions, and people do like on page 36 of the first edition version of this, you said this, but if you go read the article, the written Rifter number 79, you actually changed, and even Kevin can't keep up with all of that. So it's like, guys, back off, because Kevin's answer is going to be, what works at your table? What do you find fun? So
that is kind of like describes how his books are kind of laid out too. It's all just, you know what I mean? Like there's no real. It's just pick up whatever you want and move on.
All right, let's let me not derail this anymore. Let's get this back on track. This question is for all of you, but I think this was Phil's. Oh, we got a super chat that popped in right on time here. There's nothing wrong with simultaneous attack. I will die on this hill. Well, yes, you will be dead as you take the damage.
There's a hill you're going to die on, Law Dog. Not necessarily that hill, though. Trust me.
I agree, Law Dog.
Yeah.
I'm dead serious. If I were to run a superhero game like Heroes Unlimited, I would allow it because it makes sense. If you know you're like the Hulk and you can take that kind of hit, okay, that's fine.
You're in a freaking glitter boy, and someone's got a stick.
Well, remember I said I don't run Rifts or Heroes Unlimited.
I know, but I'm just saying.
but that's fair. There are fair reasons to accept that.
It's a good distinction that you only run those games. I agree with
Dirty simultaneous attack. All right, thank you for the $20, Law Dog. Appreciate it. Okay, so here's the follow-up. We're going to start with Phil because it was his primary question. Let me find it again. Because you kind of brought this up in terms of role-playing, immersion, cinematic play. I think maybe was the term you used. In what circumstances do you feel metagaming most strongly supports cinematic play, and when does it derail it?
Ooh, great question. I would say this is when I like metagaming. I don't know if I like it or not. So once again, I have not firm beliefs on metagaming. But tone, if you want a tone in your game, then when you're role playing, you kind of use the knowledge of what the tone of the game should be to flavor what your action is going to be. And also session 0 stuff. So that stuff is all out of character knowledge, and you have to be abiding by it all the time. That's kind of the one thing it's like kind of anchoring you and out of the game land.
I gotcha.
Is the pushing tone and session 0 stuff. And I would say with GMs, that's pretty much it. I think that's pretty much it. I don't want to use metagaming in any other way. Right now, that's where I'm at. Anyways.
Okay. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with somebody's ideas, philosophy, or whatever evolving / changing, whatever over time.
I used to think GMs should know the character's goals, but that's kind of a metagaming thing. If GM kind of pushes character goals, I feel less like that. And I feel like it's better when the characters have secret goals, because it's more fun for the GM that way when they spring them up on you. Like, oh, guess what? I had actually a vendetta against that mayor that you just popped up, and I'm murdering him now. You're like, oh, this is different. That's fun for the GM, I think.
Real quickly, I got a couple. I don't know if I should do this, but I'm going to. It's worth over $20, so we'll go with it. Agile Monk, thank you very much. He gifted 5 Legion Myth memberships, and he also got his own. And he said, I keep having to start over again, even though I pay each month. YouTube, you stink. Really? That sucks. No, and I mean that. I'm not saying that, because you should have a nice little icon on there, like Law Dog has with his 1, or Crafty with his 4, or whatever. Like, but either way, I appreciate. I know you've been around for a while. I know you've been supporting for a while. Thank you very much for the membership. So who got memberships? Jerry Wilson, Dragon in the West, Mighty Crixus, Michael, and Darth Theok. The only one on that list whose name I recognize is Darth Theok. so
Congratulations, Darth Theok.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Agile. Really appreciate that. As far as the other comments and the other Rumble Rant Super Chats, we'll get at the end of the segment here. I want to move over to Timothy Ferrelli. I'm going to ask you the same question. In what circumstances do you feel metagaming most strongly supports cinematic play, and when does it derail it?
My biggest example that I've thought of this was using Phil's earlier example of you split up the party. They're going through this house. You got one person on the top floor, one person on the bottom floor. One person gets involved in a fight on the second floor. So the person on the top floor is doing their own thing, and they end up causing some sort of damage, or if break under the ground of where the person on the second floor gets somehow saved by the opponent falling, or gets impaled, or something of that nature. I think that would be would do well. Where it would hinder, if that gets outside the realm of believability, and or there's extensive discussion trying to coordinate it. If they're really talking about it, but if it's, we're following this pattern, do this, the guy's saved. I think that's where it would be really beneficial.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like that example. I think a lot of it would depend on how the player who wanted interrupted handled. Like, as soon as the game master is telling Phil that he's being attacked, like, oh, well, I run upstairs then. It's like that. No, I don't like it. But I was like, but if he made a point like, we're not finding anything down here. I'm going to go check on Phil. I'd let slide. It's
sometimes players have to think a little creatively, but to be fair, isn't that what we kind of want out of the players anyway?
Exactly. You want to encourage that kind of behavior anyway. So
these guys are busting my balls all through the chat because of simultaneous attack. That's right. I hate it.
Pair weapons, baby.
Well, that's a different issue. But so here's a metagamey thing that might want to input on. Then we're going to go to the next segment because this one's been up for a while. This is a trope we've talked about a couple of times on various episodes, and I got to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen this in person that I can think of, but everybody's talked about it, and I know I've seen it while looking at games. Hey, I want to go kill that guy over there, or I want to go take that crap that I'm not supposed to take, but the paladin's standing next to me. Hey, paladin, go look over there. What? Yeah, I look that way. Because the player knows that they need the shiny or whatever it is over here, right? But he's like, oh, yep, I'm looking that way. Oh, geez, what happened? I am way over exaggerating that. I think you guys know that. But that's how stupid it is to me, where it's like, go look that way.
No.
It's like we're gonna take these guys in. We're gonna bring them to the sheriff. We're gonna save the lives of these folks. Or we're not gonna take all their crap, even though we need it. We're gonna find another way of negotiating with them or whatever. And the thief's like, screw this crap. Hey, wait, how did you get that? I made a deal with them. Well, I don't want to know, so I'm not going to go check on that, even though it's 10 feet that way. That kind of concept. With what do you think about that when it comes to metagaming?
Well, I think the situation in that the thief player should actually try to fool the paladin's player. He should actually distract him. He should actually do something to get his attention elsewhere. As opposed, and if the paladin is obviously just going along with it, well, then he's a crap paladin, and he needs an eraser taken to his character sheet.
I actually don't disagree.
I would say that's actually really similar to the haunted house example.
Sure.
Because it's basically like the paladin has to find some made up reason to walk over there now. Like it's that player's responsibility, and the thief's gonna do his thing. So it's like, let me come up with just a one step more creative reason to basically do the same thing. Because I don't think you're exaggerating that much, Max. That's pretty much how that scenario plays out. But man, what a missed opportunity for an awesome scene between the paladin and the thief. Like, get in a fight about it. You know what I mean? So I would want to role play that. Anyways,
okay.
Don't metagame.
Be a Kender. That way, oh look, I don't even know how I got this.
No player character Kender. I love Dragonlance, but you're not gonna be a Gully Dwarf or a Kender or an Urda or a Minotaur. Or anything else. No. Just get off my world. All right. Well, I think we talked enough on this segment. Hopefully, I pulled enough things out of these guys, and hopefully, they gave you enough information that helps you determine your thoughts on metagaming with regard to strategy and efficiency in playing the game. Let's look at a few super chats here. Well, first of all, the next segment is going to be on player and GM perspectives on metagaming. Now, to be fair, I think we've all kind of spilled the beans on this a little bit, but that's just part of the discussion of how this works. But we're going to dive into it a little bit more. Before we do that, let's hit some of the chat over there on the Rumble side. Grizzly Beardo says, I know not everyone likes Rift's vampires, but the rules are just unique to set some fun surprises for metagamers, especially for people who haven't played Rifts before. I 100% agree with that.
Yes. Yeah. They vampires can really surprise even your most hardened, your most experienced D&D players. It's down. He walks away. It's tap, tap, tap. The hell?
Hit it with a squirt gun. We were talking before, you were talking about trolls, and I've told my troll story a lot. I'll tell it again. Set up a bunch of trolls where, because I know how players are, especially experienced players. Oh, trolls, fire and acid. Let's go. This was wood. You needed to use wooden weapons.
Yeah.
And if they would have done a little better job of talking to the people in the area, they would have discovered that. The troll never goes near the forest. Well, there are other things. I don't want to dive into it all, but the idea they could have gotten this information, but yeah, fire and acid was nothing to this troll. So I'm a firm believer that you stay true to the spirit of the monster. In this case, the troll has a weakness. I just changed what that weakness is.
Sounds like that troll's from the desert.
What's that?
Sounds like that troll's from the desert where wood would be harder to get.
He was actually from an oasis. Well, I shouldn't call it an oasis because that would imply desert, more of a savanna, but yeah.
So this is how you solve the troll problem. You're walking, your characters are walking down the road, and they say, trolls, and then one guy says, oh, I know how to, in character, he says, I know how to kill trolls with acid and fire.
Mm-hmm.
And then the GM has the opportunity to bring an NPC around that's able to correct them in some way, or have that NPC. Obviously, if they're never interacting with your setting, then screw them.
Well, they couldn't act with the setting, and I realized I made a big mistake because I was conflating two issues. This was in a tundra, snowy tundra, where they found the troll. But anyway, was it a watering hole? I hear what you're saying, and I will sometimes do that, but this is one of those times where I look at the players to actually put a little effort in and do some research, not treat it like a video game where we're just going from encounter to encounter to encounter. And to be fair, those players are generally pretty good about that, but they were feeling a bit of a time crunch, and so they just wanted to handle it themselves. And
it's kind of what Timothy was saying earlier about a wizard knows about trolls. And so if they are role playing that they have the in character knowledge of how, a troll's weakness, then it kind of should be honored. But if it's a different type of troll, then when they encounter the troll, the GM should say, these trolls are different than what you're accustomed to, or or this troll looks different than the trolls from your books or something. You know what I mean?
All right, I have
give
to interrupt.
Give them that tip.
Agile Monk for $100. I will. Oh, my wife isn't in the kitchen. That means I'm going to have to get up in the middle of the segment and get my own alcohol. Agile Monk, thank you very much. He says, make it a point to split this 4 ways with your guests, good sir. There's some difficulty in that. I will make this promise to you that I will try to find a way to make that happen. Here's the difficulty in that. Taxes and YouTube's cut. So
I'm expecting my $5 back.
Right?
I will gift you my cut back.
So, but as a request, and as it was for $100, I will see how I can do that. In the meantime, my wife just turned on. Pardon me 1 second.
Appreciate the sentiment, Agile Monk.
Yes, very much so.
All right, but Agile, thank you very much for the super chat. Absolutely appreciate that. And these are some awesome guests tonight with some really good perspectives, and it's been a great show. We're not getting the viewers that we have the last few weeks, but that's fine. They'll watch later. You realize y'all get $6.50, and then they'll get taxed. And what I can do is maybe I can go to their channels and super chat. Whatever. All right, but no, we'll figure it out.
So YouTube gets paid double.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's true. I just want to be very clear to folks out there. Please don't super chat, because what will happen is people string that up. That happened on one of our charity streams where people will string that up, and it's like, I can't promise that they're going to get the money, but I will talk to them and we'll try to figure out a way. Excellent. So once again, it's 100 proof Southern Comfort. And this is for Agile Monk. Thank you very much, sir. Not only for the gifted memberships, but for the $100 super chat. You're awesome. And
I will join you and booze up.
All right. Booze up. I also, just to be very clear, I won't get drunk on stream. If people start donating, because I know how you weirdos are. Max has had 3. I bet he's getting tipsy because he's a lightweight now. So no, I will just cut myself off. But all right, let's.
I have an open question. What do you guys consider min-maxing to be metagaming? And what are your feelings on this? I don't run a lot of games where it's an issue, but I know a lot of people are very hostile to the idea of min-maxing characters. What do you guys think of that?
Let's go in opposite order. Let's start with Timothy on this one.
I don't view min-maxing as metagaming, because you're still in the character creation phase. You're not in the game phase, although you could consider it part of the game. You are making your character. You're the heroes. You're supposed to be, the greatest at what you do, and so yeah, you also promoting what you're strong at, and you have an apparent weakness to help out. So,
okay, Phil.
I would say you can really min-max in some games, and I would say there's some really gnarly things you can do, like all the character sliders maxed out, like a character generation type thing. So I would say in that situation, it's probably metagaming. If you're not making a realistic member of the world, then you are metagaming the system for sure. But there's some ways there's some systems where min-maxing generates like a believable character, but you have to really get a solid idea of what your backstory, I guess. Shouldn't really have backstory, but there has to be reasons.
I want to put this on the screen just because of his screen name and because I just drank. So he said, "Drink, therefore I am." There we go. Min-maxing reeks of video gamers trying to play a book game. Kind of agree with that.
Well, I mean, to an extent. I mean, there are people who in real life kind of min-max, who are super knowledgeable in certain things and utterly incompetent in others. Like Zero After Conadole. Sherlock Holmes is noted for being incredibly knowledgeable in a lot of fields, but he's grossly ignorant in a lot of ways. There's a lot of very simple, basic knowledge that he's like completely clueless about. It's kind of the way the character is written. But also, you can have a lot of fun GMing a min-max player because you could just lean on the mins. Okay, this stuff is going to be important.
That's
now.
actually
this
one
is
thing
going to keep coming up.
That's one of the biggest problems with min-maxing is I don't see a lot of game masters that do that because, and when I do see it, I see players in the past, I saw players cry basically like, I get it. I didn't do this or I didn't do that, but you have to mess with me every single time on that. Yes, I do.
Your choice.
Do you have to use all your mega super rolls because you took all the perfect feats and skills and attributes and so forth together?
Yes.
You know who else min-maxes in real life? Bodybuilders, especially those competition. That's an example of min-maxing in real life because they really put forth the effort to freaking.
There's two types of bodybuilding, and I'm not trying to be pedantic on this, but there's a point to this. You can min-max your physique and have all those cut muscles, but really not be as strong. How do I say this? True strength.
Yeah, that's true.
Or you could be, what's his name? The Mountain, who almost looks fat.
Yes.
But that he's the strongest man, or was, I don't know if he still is, the strongest man in the world.
Yeah.
But that's real strength. So there's a difference between physique and your actual strength. Now, do I care in a game? No. Okay, let's be honest about that. I don't. But just to put that out there, for some folks, is min-maxing metagaming? I think that it depends on your game, your setting, and your campaign. If you tell me, hey, I'm making this cutthroat, you're going to need to min-max your character, otherwise you're done, then I will min-max because that is the type of game set up. The flip side to that, and I've told this story a few times as well, I was in a Warcraft game, basically 3rd edition D&D. 5 of us made characters that were characters. 1 made a character that was a character sheet. The game master literally had to split the party every time because things that would challenge all 5 of us, he could clean up on. Things that would challenge him would wipe us out. And the guy was like, "Dude, what? It's not my fault you made bad characters." No, we actually made characters. You made a stat sheet. But if you're running a game where that stat sheet is important, the other thing I would say, and I'm going to use a 2nd edition AD&D concept, is I think it has to fit the spirit of the class. No, I will not let you sit at my table, make a fighter that specializes with darts, convert over to thief at level 6 or 7 in order to get the dex bonuses, and was it the backstab bonus, whatever the hell it is, just because the numbers work out that you get like 40 attacks per round doing all this extra damage. Not going to happen because that defeats the spirit of the fighter. The fighter's purpose, or the dart purpose, is to give the wizard something useful to use. To give the thief something useful to use, not so that the fighter can min-max numbers. So I would, because to me I'm all about the spirit of a game, and to me that ruins the spirit of the game.
And that's with your table. My table, we did that. We all min-maxed at my table, and we have one person that is notorious for doing stuff like that, and we accept it. It's at our table, so it is what it is.
Okay. Max loves to min-max.
Max? Me Max?
No, Max, or not Max.
Mr. Max?
Mr. Max. Boivin. Little min-maxer. Calling you out, Max.
Well, he'll be in for segment 5. Okay, let's finish up this segment. This one went kind of long, but it was good discussion. I'm happy for the questions out there. I think I have a couple more super chats to hit. I want to make sure here. Got Agile Monks. Got I guess the only one I started. That's not a super chat, but I started. The only thing better than simultaneous attack, simultaneous attack with paired weapons. Actually, with simultaneous attack with paired weapons makes a lot more sense because you can still parry.
Yep.
Booyah!
Boom, baby.
So,
if someone is, if you don't mind the aside,
sure.
If someone is in a combat in Palladium and they don't have an action left or an auto defense and they take an attack, are you just critting them?
They can't take an attack, but they can defend.
I'm saying they are eating an attack. They're going to get hit.
Well, I mean,
No,
first of all, dodge takes an action, so
Right.
they have no actions. But
have
you
no
can
action,
but
and they
parry
have-
does not take an action.
Okay.
Yeah. Parry,
My assumption is this: is you're always trying to avoid being hit, otherwise you wouldn't have to make an attack roll. The problem with simultaneous attack is it says that you're going to take the attack, you're basically going to eat it in order to do your attack that the target has to eat.
Oh, so you don't even roll the 5+ or whatever?
I think you still roll that. I have to look it up again. It's funny. I did a video on this, but because of all the game systems I have rattling through my head right now, I think you still have to roll.
Okay.
yeah, you still roll to strike, and it is still possible for you to miss.
And let's be honest. Name a character out there that's fighting that doesn't have at least a +4 to hit.
Most of mine.
Yeah. So it's just ones.
So, by the way, I am reading the chat. There's a lot of good stuff out there. A lot of you disagree. A lot of you agree. A lot of you having fun. I do appreciate that. We're not going to read literally everything that's a super chatting's for, but we'll hit some of the ones that were fun. And I think we did that. But we're going to move on to the next segment now after I read this little scripty poo. So we're going to be talking about player and GM perspectives on metagaming right after this. So the charity we support is the Wounded Warrior Project, a national nonpartisan organization whose mission is to honor and empower wounded warriors. Please refer to the video's description for the link to where you can make your hopefully tax-deductible donation. And of course, if you enjoy this discussion, please like this video, subscribe to all the panelist channels, which you can find in the description, or buy their stuff off DriveThruRPG if that's what the link is. I don't care. Oh, and we obviously got a $100 donation, so that means there will be a giveaway during segment 5. After if you're watching this later, you won't see it. All right, segment 3, we will start with Doc Flamingo on this one. And this is going to be about player and GM perspectives on metagaming. So players and game masters often view metagaming through different lenses. How do you think metagaming shapes each side's goals and challenges, and how does that affect session dynamics?
Well, I think it depends very much on the game you're in question, because I mean, some games have metagaming built into them as part of the rules. Like I can't remember who put out the most recent Conan game.
Modifius?
Yeah, it's built heavily on this. There's like tokens and like, you can take free rolls, but then the GM gets to screw you over with a token and things like that. So I mean, some games are built around doing that. For example, I really dislike meta currencies of any kind, and this is something we haven't gotten into. So some metagaming is baked into the systems themselves. I tend to hate that stuff because you're turning your RPG into a board game then. Which, I mean, if you want to do that, fine, but you're kind of changing the species. You've now made a trans game.
I mean, to be fair, I'm against things like hero points and what was it in BattleTech Second Edition, karma points or whatever. Yeah. I'm against things like that. I think there are better systems in play for that. I love Free League's Push the Roll because it comes with some absolute risk.
Can you describe what that is? Karma.
So in Free League, what it is, if you fail, so Free League has a pretty particular rule where they're very clear about this, with the exception of combat. Because if you miss, you can attack again. If you fail a roll, you're done. You have to literally change the environment to do it again. Let's talk about climbing. If you try to climb something and you fail, you're done until you change the environment. Like, I'm going to use a grappling hook now, or I'm going to go around the other side where the stairs are, or whatever. You have to somehow change what you're trying to do. You just can't repeat yourself. So what they have in place of that is this thing called pushing your roll, where it's like, okay, you failed, but you can effectively re-roll. But now you can hurt yourself, hurt your equipment. If you fail a roll, you just fail. Theoretically, you can have falling damage from a climb, but you just fail. You don't get the result that you wanted. Didn't get the information you wanted. Didn't climb to where you wanted to go. You didn't shoot the target you wanted to shoot. Whatever. But you can push your roll, which gives you a reroll. But any ones you roll come back to bite you in the butt.
Oh yeah, okay, I remember hearing about that.
And I like that because I think it provides some good risk reward on that, and it openly states, no, you can't keep trying to climb this wall if you failed. That's what the roll is for.
But what was the karma stuff from BattleTech?
So because Second Edition, I think they called it karma. There was it karma in Second Edition BattleTech or Mech Warrior, I should say.
I think so.
Where it's like you got these points and you could use it for rerolls.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are better and worse examples. I mean, I
Sure.
think better ones are where it's kind of intermingles with the game world. Like, for instance, I can't remember what it was. I played a game where they had like divine favor that you
Okay.
could get points for, but you had to do things in the game, and it literally represented, the gods are favoring you. They'll do you a favor. Like, you could use one. You're in a shipwreck and you're out in a raft at sea. You could expend one. Oh, if somebody comes by, and that's kind of built into the game. It's a in-game mechanic, whereas just like, oh, I get to re-roll this, especially with the Modifius Conan, because a player can abuse his fellow party very badly by using these things over
Keep
and over
stacking
again.
up that momentum.
And
or Doom, whatever it's called. I know it's momentum in the Mutant Chronicles.
Yeah, I think they call it that too.
sure
I've only read it.
The thing is, I like momentum itself if it ended there, but then you have like the fate currency also, and which is like permanent momentum, and you can bank your momentum. Like no, but I like the idea that what I do if I roll really well can pass on to the next character. It's actually something I employ in my games. Another thing that Free League does with a lot of abilities, if you get extra successes, you can pass that on to another characters. You're kind of helping them as long as it's relevant to what's going on. You just can't randomly say, here, have successes. I like concepts like that. But that banking of momentum and the ups and downs and the stacking of the chips, and now the game master's got all this. You're like, do you really want him throwing all this doom at you? Do you?
Just pelting the players at the table.
Right.
And now you get hit by lightning, and now it starts to snow.
Yeah, I think that goes overboard. So how do you handle situations where metagaming, either through providence or completely accidental, reveals hidden information prematurely? A character blurts something out, and you know that they just solved something I wanted to take them 4 hours to, and they didn't solve it because of their character's action. The guy just blurted it out, and they're all like, yeah, that makes sense. I read that in such and such's novel.
I think you just kind of have to roll with it then, because otherwise it's like it becomes too much. It becomes too punitive if you step in and like prevent it. Then I think you just got to make an adjustment in a situation like that, especially if it's an unintentional thing, like something just occurs to somebody. That's just one of those things you got to like be able to bob and weave as you go.
So not in every single case and point of metagaming has to be addressed by the game master.
Yeah, I mean, you have to pick your battles, as in, with anything. I mean, if you try to like lay down the law in every situation, then it just becomes you're just like bullying the players, which normally I'm entirely in favor of. But
I forgot I got to get you and Nathan Dog on the same show.
But you got to pick your battles. You got to decide when it's a problem and when it's not. Usually, I say you just kind of have to roll with it and make an adjustment.
Okay. Well, let's move on over to Phil for this question. Players and game masters often view metagaming through different lenses. How do you think metagaming shapes each side's goals and challenges, and how does that affect session dynamics?
Okay, so if you're metagaming as a player, then your challenges are a lot less impactful. If you know kind of if the player has that, I guess, out of character knowledge that helps solve the issue, or if because they've seen what someone else has done or whatever, they talk to the GM or something, then there's no real challenge anymore. It totally takes away from the immersive experience, the immersion. I would say that when a GM is metagaming, so for instance, when a GM knows, oh, he only has 2 health left, and I'm gonna explode this thing. Okay, well, it only does 1 damage. Like, that's lame. There's no threats to you, so the players don't take your setting seriously. There's nothing's real. We're just doing story time, I guess. And kind of like what I said before, I think that knowing the character's goals is probably not that great for a GM. A GM is a player in my view. He's also playing a game, and he should be surprised by the player characters. So if the player characters can surprise the GM, then they're having more fun, just the same way that the GM surprises the players. So I think I answered the question well. Obviously, tone, like I said before, super important. That's the only thing I have decided metagaming is good for, is to establish a tone in a game, and also to do session zero things like. But even session zero isn't really tone, I guess.
So you know, again, I understand the concept of vetting characters,
Session
social
zero.
contract, and session zero.
Mm-hmm.
But when you run a game, how do you address metagaming that emerges from players sharing outside knowledge?
Oh my gosh. Crispy does this all the time.
Crispy, you've been called out.
Unfortunately, you don't address it. You just like give them one of these. And then you keep playing your turn. And then at the end you go, hey, remember that time? I feel like that was metagaming. And then they're like, yeah, you're right. And they try not to do it next time.
One big problem I had once was I had a very scientifically knowledgeable player who was going, well, no, I could absolutely create an electrical current with some felt and copper. It's like, no, we are not playing ye old burn notice. I'm not going to have it. You don't know how to do that, and you need to shut up. I mean, sometimes you got to step in with stuff like that, I think. But
That's a common problem.
By the way, if you ever play a modern role-playing game, watch Burn Notice. So many good plans there.
So there's a module for Earth Dawn. I think it's called Terror in the Skies, if I remember correctly. By the way, I said Earth Dawn drink. Where it specifically says in there, if the players try to make a parachute, don't let them. Now, I've had a lot of players go, that's bullshit. The way the game explains it is like, nobody in a world of this much high magic, with airships, with people that can literally fall from the sky and land safely, and with elemental air floating around everywhere, would even think about making a parachute. It's just not part of the setting.
Absolutely. Necessity is the mother of invention. If you have solutions to problems, you don't go looking for new ones.
You're saying if people have airships, they don't know about parachutes?
They don't need them.
They have featherfall.
What if they fall out of airships?
Featherfall.
Well, one they don't. That's just as often as like somebody falling off. Oh, I'd say falling off a cruise ship, but that happens. It's like
it's way easier to do that than fall out of a plane.
But again, the other thing, there's so much. It is a mega high magic world setting. That doesn't mean that everybody can feather fall, but the idea is the chances of it happening are so remote because there are too many safety nets in place. You know, it just is built into the setting. So, and I always took that to heart ever since reading that. Now I know that irks some players, but the idea is in Phil, you kind of said this earlier with, you know, the setting shapes the characters. You know, if you can take 100 hit points, this thing's only going to do 2d6 damage. You know, it kind of makes sense that you would. Well, in this case, it's the same thing. The setting, just parachute. What are you talking about? Why would I need something like that? First of all, I'm not going to jump off the edge. If I do jump off the edge, there are things built into the airship that will prevent me from hitting the ground. They play this game called I can't remember what it is. Basically, they try to swing on a rope from one side of the ship underneath it to the other side. I mean, you know, stuff like that. There's just too much in play there that they wouldn't even think about that.
Then why are they thinking about it?
Well, the players would, because
they never would think about it. Then what are they thinking about it for?
Well, it's the players. I mean, a Sky Raiders, for example, can literally jump off the airship, go like this, and land from 500 feet, if not higher, and just land and go, because it's just built into the class. You know, again, really high magic world. So it's going back to the point that I'm making. Yeah, sure. Tourniquets, is that something that they knew about in the Middle Ages? Now, I'm not going to go read a historical document. If you're a cleric, if you're a healer type, if you're a doctor type, a surgeon, whatever, I'll probably let you do that. If you're the thief, probably not. So there comes a point I'm going to make the decision where does it seem viable for your character to know that? Does it fit the setting? Does it fit the concept of the world? I'll let it go. If not, just because you know it. And let me use one other example. Again, another one I've said a lot. Sky, I know, part of Legion of Myth. He's on the game streams with Heathen Dog a lot. Knows a lot about lasers. That's his job. He fixes medical equipment that includes lasers. And he used to just drive me nuts. She'd be like, "Oh, what color's the laser?" I don't know. It's a pew pew laser. Well, if it's green, then I can do this. If it's chemical based, I can do that. I'm like, dude, nobody cares. It's a laser that goes pew pew in the game. He's like, no. I need to know because there are things I can do to protect myself from this stuff. And it's like, I'm not a scientist that studied lasers, so no, it's just going to be pew pew, and it does damage, and you're going to use the in-game mechanics to get around that.
Just say they're rainbow colored, like
rainbow colored.
That doesn't sound like one I know about.
I have a rotating rotating color setting on my gun. Pew, pew,
Just
pew.
throw science babble at them.
Well,
It's one of those lasers that cuts you in half. Now, next player's turn.
It's actually a pro baser. Like,
and so this is kind of going with what you're saying, Doc. And it's like, I love the idea of player creativity when it's in the setting, but when it's things like that. That's like, sorry, guys. One, you're either going too far into the game that the game doesn't cover, or B, you're trying to use 21st century knowledge to something that's the equivalent of like 8th to 10th century. Stop it. And when did Da Vinci... What?
Here's another situation. Since the airship thing reminded me of it, and this came up in a game once, and I got into a huge argument with the player because I broke his legs. He decided, because he had a high amount of hit points, this is back when we were playing D&D, he could take that 100-foot fall. He sat there, I got about 80% chance of coming out of this.
Okay.
And he took the dive. And I was like, you break both your legs. Wait, no, you broke both your legs. I'm not having that. I'm not having you jump off a cliff and shaking it off. Like, oh.
That is an issue with playing to numbers for sure,
Yep.
and not treating it like an indicator of how you should role play.
Well, during the veteran stream, I had a regeneration ability, and I'm just playing absolute bat crazy with my character. I get on this freaking robot, I take it over, and I'm running, going straight full speed at this locked door that we're trying to get through. I yank it back, so when I hit the door like this. I hit the door full force, and of course Sean is over there. He's like, "Good luck, sucker!" And go break through the door. I get launched into the room, and somehow when the impact broke both my legs. Now, of course, I have the regeneration ability. I was very lucky, and I aced it and healed right back up. But things happen. So again,
you have spaghetti legs now.
They were great. It was awesome.
So that said airship that I mentioned before, I think it was that adventure where Garthon jumped off the airship because he wanted to see if he could take it. Now, Earthdawn has some things baked into the game because this dude had a really high toughness. Again, high magic world. He jumped off, but when I rolled the damage, it wasn't enough hit points to kill him, but he suffered like 5 wounds. Now, if you don't know what that means in the game, that basically reduced all of his abilities by 4, which at that circle basically brought all of his abilities down to like nothing. He broke both arms, both legs, so at least there's something baked into the game that said, even if you survive this, you're going to have some residual effects.
Yeah, smart.
Anywho, all right, so Phil, I asked you a follow-up. So Timothy.
Yes.
We're going to get you with the main question. I'm sorry, like, to the folks out there who keep sending me messages over the week saying, I got to shut up and let the guys talk. Sorry, I'm excited about the conversation as well. It's a great panel tonight. They're saying a lot of good stuff and things that I definitely, have opinions on as well. I'm a gamer too, but, we're here for them. So
I like talking to you, Max.
I think it's been a fun conversation today. And I love the fact that even though we don't have any simulationists on here, or we don't have any skirmish gamers on here, we're still probing from all the sides. So anybody can watch this, and chat's definitely got opinions. We know that. But all right, Timothy. Players and GMs often view metagaming through different lenses. How do you think metagaming shapes each side's goals and challenges, and how does that affect session dynamics?
So the player side, you got to try to keep the real world knowledge from what your character is doing. Like we've had a couple of the examples, laser guy, several other things. Trying to incorporate that with the game just to make what they're doing look a little bit cooler or whatnot, because their character wouldn't know. For the GM side, you're pretty much you in metagame world. The GM pretty much lives with metagame because everything you have to know everything that's going on. And you're reacting to what they're doing, and you have to sometimes think ahead and rule on how it impacts the world. So in that case, I think that the GM's role is metagame.
Do you use an NPC and give him unfair knowledge against the players? And I just realized we're not even here right now. Whew, okay, now we're safe. Do you like, you know what? I know this because I'm the game master, but this NPC wouldn't necessarily know XYZ, but now's a fun time to bring it up, so now he's going to know it.
Actually, sometimes yes. I've altered some NPCs without realistically the NPC would not have that knowledge, but I've had to do that to move this to guide the story a little bit, to give them the option of a solution.
Okay, what about the quantum ogre? Do you know that concept?
No, I don't.
So, you're supposed to meet an ogre, say, at this part of the dungeon, but they don't go that way. Or it can be willed. It doesn't matter where it is, but it's easy to say dungeon, right? They don't go that direction. They go somewhere completely elsewhere. But you want them to meet that ogre or wizard or NPC. It's just called quantum ogre. So you force it to happen by just picking him up and plopping him down over here. I don't know if that's necessarily metagaming. I kind of see it as metagamey because you are using the fact that the players did something that you weren't expecting and using your kind of DM fiat to meta it over there. It's borderline, but I mean, what do you think of the idea of the quantum ogre?
If you're running if your story relies on them going to that location, to that meeting that ogre, meeting that NPC, going to that specific town, then you got to do what you got to do. So most of mine don't necessarily. My game, I'm giving them the options of. So yeah, I gave my characters a little bit more lore about their origins with a character that wouldn't necessarily have it, but I did wrap it in an envelope that I did modify the character to have that.
Okay. Anything you guys want to jump in on?
Yeah, I think all my ogres are basically quantum ogres, because when I do have whenever I have an encounter idea, I rarely have a specific location for it. I just I want this to happen. I want them to run into this guy, and I just know this is a good spot for this to happen. I rarely have it tied down to a specific place exactly so that I don't have to deal with that or worry about that.
I prefer
unless they do something where I figure, they probably would have avoided it because they did something clever. But yeah, I just kind of have a general encounter idea if I want to use it, and I'll work it in where it seems to make sense.
For quantum ogres, in my style, I typically don't prep anything, so it doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter where they're going, because whatever happens is going to be whatever is put in front of them at the time. It's like reverse quantum ogre. There's I don't have anything ready. So when they open the door, something's going to happen.
Schrodinger's ogre. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. But one thing I would say about NPC knowledge is NPCs are really good to give in-character short, imperfect knowledge exposition. But if you're using your NPC to explain to a player character why what they're doing is stupid and why they're better than you, then that's a real big problem with a lot of GMs. They really want you to do their plan.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come up with the plan, they want to make sure that you know that it's not as cool as their plan. And that's a real big problem with GMs. So I would caution against making your NPCs cooler than the player characters. Don't do that. They should suck. Unless they're the main bad guy, then they can be cooler. That's the only one.
I think Bear, he does NPCs amazingly well. Probably the best I've seen out of Game Master as a whole. He and that goes back many years in many different parts of the world. And why I say that is because they tug on us just enough, but we're still making all the decisions. We're still doing what we want to do. We're still, discovering this stuff. But they kind of poke us just enough to make sure that we understand the importance of what we're doing, or that there are other options out there, things like that. And I think he does a really good job of doing that with the NPCs.
I would say if your NPC is correcting the player character and they're being a little insulting about it, then you are dissuading your players from being proactive with the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to start turning into waiting for my turn to roll dice and let me see if I can figure out the thing that my GM wants me to say. They're going to do a lot of out of character questions, and it's going to slow the game to a crawl, and it's going to make it so they don't really think they're role playing anymore. Because the thing on the back of the box of role playing games is you get to do what you want. So if you have a GM constantly like correcting you over and over, that's a big problem.
Yeah, and it can come off as scolding.
Yeah.
Very easily, and you have to be careful of that, because then you're just going to turn everybody off, and people are just going to get annoyed. And
one of my favorite tactics, and I didn't do it a lot, but I remember doing it a few times that I enjoyed, is I'd tell the players, okay, look, I'm going to give you about a half hour. I'm going to go grab something to eat or whatever, but I'm going to give you a half hour. You guys plan, or maybe they would go, especially when we were in the Air Force, they'd go to the chow hall or something. Like, go do your plan. Do me a favor. Write it down. Don't talk about it around me, but you got to write it down so I know generally what your idea was and so forth, to see how far off the rails you went with it. But that way I wasn't even hearing their plan. And I kind of reacted to it that way. So in some regard, I couldn't be like, oh, I didn't think about this, and they just planned this through. Because I know game masters that would do stuff like that. And I probably did that when I was younger as well. So I like that idea that they kind of had that time to do it, especially when they really had the time in the game to do it. And then I would compare what actually happened to what they wrote down. It's usually just bullet points. It wasn't, obviously, they didn't know what they're going to do round by round, because, combat's weird. But if they stuck to it to a decent degree, and I realized that what they were doing was a sound plan, they got bonus experience points for that.
Yeah,
But
go ahead. Sorry.
That's a problem that a lot of GMs, and I've had that problem many times with this problem of taking their plans and then negating it.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh, wait, they're going to do this. Hold on, I got to.
Yeah, they're going to do this. Well, I'm going to do this to counter that.
Mm-hmm.
That's metagaming that the GMs have to be mindful of. Try to hold yourself back. Would their their opponents be doing that? Did they plan for that to happen? If they did, by all means, yes, that's part of consequences. If they didn't, stop GM, stay in your lane, do what was reasonable for their opponents to do. If the players are going to win spectacularly, let them. They're the heroes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Player characters want to be cool. Players want to be cool.
Mm-hmm.
You should let your players be cool.
Yeah, and there's a difference between like improvising a complication and just blocking.
Right.
You're trying to do too.
Now, are there times where the NPCs or their opponents actually do it? Yeah, yes. There might be a time or two, not often, where the NPC or the PCs just get wrecked because they were so easy to read. It's like, yeah, this is exactly what they're going to do: wreck the PCs, and now you're in jail. Good luck.
It's awesome. I think I'm leaning more towards the idea of like when you have these what you guys are describing is kind of like a big operation or like a heist or something like that. I think you kind of, just to kind of correct myself, I think you want to have a little bit of prep there or you want to have an understanding of certain things that exist in the world. I'm talking about 4D no prep people right now. Probably want to have a good idea of a few things so that they can actually avoid them or actually have a legitimate plan. Because if it's just all fly by your seat stuff, then you run into that same problem where the PCs aren't really accomplishing anything. There's nothing being accomplished. It's just you are going through this thing that's eventually going to end, and they haven't really done anything. But if you give them things that they could potentially overcome, then it becomes a much better experience, I think, especially for the GM.
Here's an example of what Phil's saying. I've got an object inside a trash heap that the players want. They really, really want this.
Mm-hmm.
They're not friendly with the people running the trash heap. So the players have stated, well, worst case, we'll break in and get that item and skedaddle out. And they know they're going to make a really big enemy. So now I have to prepare what kind of defenses would be reasonable for this trash heap. So that way, when they do try to break in with whatever method, however they plan on doing this, I'll have a set level. Here's where the defenses are. Are they going to bypass the defenses, or are they going to trip the defenses? And that's where that you need to have that ahead of time and have that set.
What happens in success or failure, for sure.
Yep.
Every time before they roll, you should know that.
Yep.
Let me read this super chat since it's a $20 one. Lawdog says, thank you very much for the $20, Lawdog. Appreciate that. Don't modify the encounter to foil the PC's plans. That's an adversarial GM. Agreed. The setting should be realistic and dangerous enough all on its own. Life sucks. Doesn't need the GM to make it suckier.
That is true.
Too bad I'm here and I'm going to do it.
You're in my game now, Lawdog.
Yes, I fundamentally disagree. I believe it is my primary
with
job
everything
to make
except for
life
the last
suck
part.
for the players.
It will suck.
If the bad guy's good enough, they will suck.
Yeah, one of the things that I had to, because if anybody who watches the show might surprise you, but I have a little bit of an ego. But it used to really irk me when I was younger that I would have this grandiose plan. And yes, I used to be way more prepped than I even am now, but it used to take me almost the entire week to prep the next 8-hour session. And I would get, again, it's just the way I did it then. If you like to prep. If you like no prep, don't prep. I don't care if you're having fun. It's a cop-out answer. You're having fun. I'm not going to sit at a table long-term that's no prep the entire time because it's going to just feel like everything's random and chaotic, and I don't like that. I want more structure in that. But I also want to play a character that can do his own things and make his own choices. So I always believe that there's a balance in there. But with that said, I forgot what I was saying now.
Something about when you were younger, you had some plan, or you were setting up a heist or something.
No, so one of the things that it took me a lot to understand, I'd actually learned this more as a player than as a game master, is that when you have 6 players, 7 players at a table, and 1 game master, I don't care how stupid those 7 people are, those IQs will add up, okay?
Sure.
And it's, yes, if you're 7 people and you think that you're really awesome because you pulled one over on me because this guy thought of something that literally none of the rest of you thought of, I'm not going to be mad about that. Okay? Like I used to be. When I was younger, I used to be mad about that. Mm-hmm. I used to be somewhat of an adversarial game master in that regard. Like, oh, screw these guys. No, don't let them bask in the glory. There's always an option that you can do outside of that. Do it back to them. I hate that one. Honestly, I personally don't like that one because it seems like a cop-out. It's like, Max never did this to me before. Now all of a sudden he's doing this because we started doing it. I just feel it's kind of cheese bait, but it's still legit play that you can do. Give them the W. You guys got it. If it's something that you think, this is my personal take, I'm not expecting anybody else to do this. If you think it's something that they're going to turn into a crutch, I do. And it's funny because Sean Robertson from Palladium, we have the kind of the same mentality on this. You know what? Good job. That's an awesome idea. Since you're expecting it to work this time, we'll see how the rolls pan out. But if it works, it works. Don't try it again because that's not the intent of what this was supposed to be or do, or whatever the spell is. Or you get the idea, the ability. Because you're going to turn it into a crutch and you're going to break it, and everything's going to become boring. But there you have different things that you can do to get around that. I've learned not to prep. Who's it that was saying that? A lot, but I still do prep. I do believe in prepping, but my prep is a little bit different than what a lot of people out there tend to do, because I run on what I call timelines. It's probably a bad way of saying it, but it's what I call it, timelines. So there's always stuff in the world going on, and you're only 5, 6, 7 players. You are not going to be able to keep up with the entire world. So sure, go stop the dragon horde that's happening over here, but over here the cult is still rising in power. Okay, go stop the cult. Well, the evil empire back there is still amassing an army. Whatever it happens to be, the world is still going to move. There's always going to be something for you to do. And the last thing that I think was what I wanted to say, because I wrote it down here, but maybe not, is this is more in regard to the quantum ogre. Don't use the quantum ogre. I agree with Doc. I don't always place things exactly in a spot. I just say, hey, this is what I want to have happen, and as long as it's reasonable, it will still happen. But don't do it to cover up bad game design. I don't care if you're running a module, or if you wrote your own stuff. If never hinge an encounter can be anything. It doesn't have to be combat. It can be social. It can be investigative, whatever. But don't hinge it on one. They have to do this one thing. I'm a firm believer of the 3 things. You can do more. You have to fight it. You have to find it. You have to get by it. You have to talk to it. Whatever it happens to be. But if one aspect fails, well, didn't we talk about earlier? Didn't get the door open. Now what do you do? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you didn't get that door open, but there's going to be another way. Now you just got to take the long way to get there. I don't know what that has to do with metagaming anymore. I know when I first thought about it, it did.
Quantum ogre?
It's quantum metagame.
Yeah. I think I'm leaning more towards light prep. We used to, what you all are calling is, as encounters, we call pushes. So you basically, whenever there's a lull in the action, you have like 4 pushes set up, and then it's like, okay, this is now happening, and now you're going to do this. Like,
so let me ask you a question. This is a little off topic, so I don't want to dive into this too much. But for the 4D concept, yeah. I love, at least at the beginning of a campaign, because I like characters to get to know each other and grow. And I say characters specifically. I call it the campfire story time. Right. Where I actually give them the time to sit around setting up camp and talk to each other as characters. Sometimes I'll throw something in there. Now, if they've been playing for a year, we're probably going to bypass some of that. But I love it at the beginning where they're getting to know each other and understand each other and find out, that was it the group dynamics, forming, storming, norming, performing, journeying. Those was it the 5 phases of group dynamics, right?
Okay.
So I like to allow that and just let them role play, even if it's slow, because most people in my group would never find that slow. They love to role play. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, do that, because role playing is super important. Typically, when you're role playing, you are active. So what I mean is, you're still saying where you are and what you're doing while you're role playing. So if I'm around a campfire, I'm sitting by the campfire, and I'm actively cooking like a fish or something. And all these other things are happening while we're discussing stuff. Someone might go and start sharpening their sword, and it doesn't feel dull. It feels like a real moment that's happening in the game. Like, there's slow moments, and I hate comparing role-playing to other mediums like TV, but that's what it is, right? There's character development. There's characters getting to know each other, and that talking and that getting to know each other should happen all the time. There's not a scene for it. It should be like, we are moving over here now. And the other thing I wanted to note is the characters should push time, not the GM. And what I mean is, if we're all getting ready to sleep, and the player characters all want to talk to each other, the scene should end when they're all like, okay, well, I'm going to bed. And then it's like, okay, me too. And then you move forward in time. And then, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm not going to sit there across my arms and be like, you guys have to role play for 8 hours, Yeah. But
who's sleeping now? You?
But I love doing, I am that guy that will do the wandering encounters at night. Yeah. Now I change it because I'm a 2nd edition AD&D guy. I'm not going to use all 20 that are on there. I pare it down to 6, and I actually have those 6 ready to go because I want to have, personally, a little bit more preparedness, and I don't want to have to think about 20 different monsters that it could be. I'm going to pare it down to 6. So I do some prep in that, and I do think about that. Okay, they're going to be in the woods. What are some woodland creatures? Let's pick 5. Oh, I haven't used this one in a long time. What does it do? Oh, I can think of some really interesting ways they can come across this. If it's setting if it's important to the setting, maybe it is the same creature over and over again. Why do we keep running across orcs? You know, that could be, yeah, well, it could be part of the timelines, you know, that I'm working on. But again, I don't know why I keep saying this stuff that doesn't have to do with metagaming, because I think it does, and then I say it, and then it's like, that had nothing to do with metagaming. Anyway.
Oh yeah, prep. We're talking about prep. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and yeah, let's. I want to keep talking about that, but it's not what this topic is about today, so that's my fault. Yeah. Sorry, folks.
It's more like, should GMs be metagaming? I think that's really what we're talking about now.
Yeah, I think
is prep metagaming?
Well, I think it's the opposite.
I think the GM is always metagaming to a degree and has to, but I mean, it's all a question of balancing it out and not just, okay, how do I screw them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
challenge, yes. Game masters are to put the characters in challenges, put challenges before them, put challenges around them, but every challenge should be bypassable or defeatable.
Yeah.
And several challenges are directed to allow one character to shine or over the others at certain points. So you have to be aware of what their characters are, what their strengths are. So yeah, it is a game metagaming. Yes. Is it detrimental? No. This is part of the good metagaming.
So there's good metagaming.
Yes.
Okay.
Pushing tone, I would say, is good metagaming.
All right, I've got like a million things rattling in my brain, but none of them are related to metagaming.
I think we're getting real loose with the definition of metagaming right now. But.
Well, that's my fault. You know, we're actually pretty much done with the third question anyway. We're ready to jump into the fourth one here. And I just like these gaming discussions. So when you guys say things that I'm like, ooh, you know.
Me too.
All right, anything you guys want to wrap up about perspectives of player, and actually, no, I have one question I want. This is for all of you. I don't care who jumps in first. Have you noticed, whether with yourself or with your group or with groups you've played with, that as a player, you see metagaming differently than as a game master?
Do you mean when a player does it versus when a game master does it?
That could be. So, for example, maybe as a player, you'd be okay with this kind of metagaming, thinking that it's relevant. I don't want to put that puts words in your mouth there, but you're okay with this type of metagame. But as a game master, you're like, no, or vice versa. As a game master, you're like, there's no problem there. But as a player, like, nope, that'd be metagaming. I'm not going to do that.
I understand. So, how do you view it as a game master or?
Yeah. Is there a difference for you? And I don't mean in the definition sense. I mean at the sitting at the table sense.
For me, there is a difference because it's depending on which table I'm sitting at. I've got my table here locally with me that we do metagame a lot. We min-max a lot. And that's what the dynamics of that table is. But the game I run on Saturday nights with those that are not here mostly, the metagaming is greatly reduced because I'm dealing with a different caliber, different set of individuals. So it's primarily dependent on the table and what's acceptable to the table.
Yeah, I think if I'm doing anything, I think would fall into the gray area of metagaming as a player. I think I tend to look at it as a game master, even as a player. It's like, how would I react to this if a player did this? Would this annoy me as a game master? And if that would bother me, then I won't do it. But that's kind of how I would police myself there.
I could say before I vetted my players and game master, it bothered me a whole lot more than it does now, because when people do it, it's typically just a mistake now, or they're just excited about what's happening. And I'm after the generation of the story, whereas before it was more of a game, and metagaming is cheating now, and you're cheating me, and I don't have any control over over the game. So when you're taking my control away, they're cheating in some way that it makes me more upset. But
it's funny you say that, because I kind of agree with that.
Well, it's not that funny then.
Well, I mean, like I
It's
wasn't
called
thinking of the
agreeing.
word cheating until you said it, but I do. I try not to, but I do kind of see it as cheating.
Yeah, totally cheating. Especially when someone like when you're like messing with the players a little as a player, when you're like messing with the other characters, and then everyone's like suddenly paying attention to you. You're like, okay, you guys are clearly metagaming. Relax. I don't know. That bothered me a lot before I started playing with the people I am now.
All right. Well, I think we're ready to move on into the fourth and final segment, which is going to be long-term effects and balancing metagaming. Can you balance metagaming? I don't know. We'll find out here in a little bit. But let's first read some super chats and Rumble rants. Let's start with the Rumble side. Also, I'll forget about it. Grizzly Beardo for $5. Thank you very much for the $5. He says, I like the term push. I've never heard that before, but I do apply Raymond Chandler's law of writing in my games. When in doubt, have a man come through the door with a gun in his hand.
Exactly. Drop the giant banana, as Guy Schlandlers would say. Rest in peace, and he's not dead. But
All right. Oh, you know, there was something that you said, Phil the Thrill, and I want to be very clear because I get very nasty comments no matter who I talk about. I'm not busting this guy's balls. But Shauner and I used to have a pretty big disagreement because he used to have that whole.
well, obviously you were wrong then.
Well, to him, but he had this whole idea that it should be like a movie. You should play it in 2 hours. It should be played like a movie. If they would do it in a movie, you do it. And I'd be like, no, I see role playing as like a book. Mm-hmm. You know, you and then what made me think about this is when you said, you know, don't like to compare it to other mediums. I do like to compare it to reading a novel. I want to play the novel. I want to play the trilogy. I want to play now we're writing it. I'm not saying it's written beforehand. It's called emergent storytelling. The dice and your actions determine what the story is, not the game master up front. Be very clear about that. But that means there's going to be some exposition. There's going to be some Tolkien-esque descriptions. Okay, maybe that's a bad example, but you know, it's okay to have some of that. Now, I'm not a 4D guy, so I don't go with the whole players can influence the world to the point that they do. I respect what they've got going on. It's just not for me. But so I'm going to give some descriptions out there. Maybe leave some to the players to either figure out or you know. Like, here's how I would do it. If there's a phone there, I'm going to make a call. I'm not going to say, hey, I grabbed the phone and make a call. So I still leave it in the game master's court with that regard. But why am I losing my mind? I only had one shot.
Do you say I look for a phone?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'd actually say it the way I said it a moment ago. It's like, I'm looking around. If I see a phone, I need to make a phone call. I'm going to call 911.
That's fun.
That's how I'd say it. And I forgot my freaking point again.
So I don't see. I actually disagree with
Shauner
on this as well. I don't like the comparison of role-playing games to movies. The main reason he made that comparison, I think, was about timing. So he thought that your actions should take place quickly. We shouldn't be talking about a door, you know, for 20 minutes.
Well, he would say things, you know, like action scenes don't take, you know, 2 hours in a movie. That's the entire movie. I think it depends on the game. See, I'm one of those people that believes that gameplay is part of playing the role-playing game. So I don't have an issue with gameplay. I don't believe in the term pacing when it comes to a role-playing game. Unless you get so obtuse out there where it's like every rule looking up is affecting pacing of the game. Okay, then I'll agree with you there. But I don't believe that we're writing a movie, that we're doing an impromptu, we're sitting in a play necessarily. We're playing a game also. So that, and again, this wasn't to bust his balls. It was to go back. Now I remember what I was saying, is I like the idea. My books are this thick. Now, if you got the Brandon Sanderson books, which don't get anymore, this fifth book is horrible. I'm having a real hard time getting through it. They're that thick. It's going to take me a while to read that. It's okay if it takes you a while to complete an adventure. You don't have to complete it in 2 to 3 hours. You can stop the session, come back the next time, and move on to some more.
I would say I agree more with you as far as the timing goes. That's why I didn't like the movie comparison, because I don't want to feel rushed. I want to I don't care if there's a slow part of the scene. Like, I don't care if there's a slow scene as long as it makes sense contextually within the system or within the setting. With the book, though, I would say that the analogy falls apart in that you don't have these long paragraphs of exposition that are out of character in a role-playing game. It should be imperfect knowledge that you're gaining from NPCs or from descriptions of things your character is physically observing.
I firmly believe that one of the things you and I will probably agree at, well, maybe not 100%, we'll say 90 to 95%, is constantly staying in character. I don't have a problem if somebody bounces out of character to ask a relevant question, not, can my character jump to the moon? No, that's not a relevant question. But
what would be an example?
To get clarification, hey, did you say that this guy moved behind the boxes over there? Yes, I did. Because you may have forgotten, I may have not been clear with my description, something like that. To get some clarification, I don't have a problem with that. But no, don't take up all the time to look up your spells. Okay, it's your turn. Oh, so what are you doing this round, Doc? Hold on, I got to see what Magic Missile does. All right, well, you're looking through your spell book, Timothy. It's your turn. I absolutely will do that to keep things flowing because you should know what your character's doing or how that ability works before you get to that point.
The only time I would say in your example, you just say, I look over by those boxes for that guy. And then the GM could say, oh, he's over by the door. Or you spot him by the door. He just kind of corrects you like that. Yeah, that can be done in character. I have no problem with that.
No, I understand.
One time I would say it's okay to clarify out of characters when you forget stuff like what your character's mom's name is or something that you clearly should know. It's just, there's no way for you to check it. You know what I mean? And but that's I'm talking about an extreme example on the moon. I'm doing I'm doing that leftist thing.
All right. Doc, Timothy, anything you want to jump in, or should I go to the next comment?
Well, as far as like the book movie analogy, I think both are problematic, both comparisons, because I think RPGs are as far from movies and books as the books and movies are from each other. Very different things work in different mediums. Like intricate choreographed fight scenes are great in movies. They are tedious beyond words in books. That's why Robert E. Howard was the great master of the action sequence in text, because there really isn't very much. It's a few punchy, visceral lines to let you know what happened, and then moving on. A game kind of falls directly between the two in that sense, because you do want to have some detail, but it can get also bogged down very quickly.
Right. So. Well, yeah, and I mean, to be fair, I'm not a fan of really long combats, games that, combats that last 20 rounds. It's one of the reasons why I do run more gritty games, more bullets kill, man. I'm sorry. But I have 400 hit points.
You guys should play Easy D6. You only get 3 health.
Fair.
One other thing you said that I appreciate being able to correct is our view of what role-playing game means. That it's two separate things. Like, is it more game? Is it more role-playing? I would say I would compare it to playing a baseball game. When you are playing baseball, that is the game. So when you are role-playing, that is the game. So the game is being able to role-play. The game of baseball is playing baseball.
Sure, but baseball is also a bunch of analytics, a bunch of pitchers spitting on the mound. It's a bunch of people scratching their butts. It's a bunch of people
you guys don't do that in your role-playing games?
What's that?
You don't do that in your role-playing game?
So, like one of my friends, I love football. He hates football because he's like, how much actual game is there in a football game? It's for 3 hours, and I think you get like 10 minutes of action. I feel like that about soccer, So, I mean, there's the game within the game, so to speak. I hear what you're saying, and I'm not saying this, by the way, to belittle you or the 4D thing. Everybody should play the way they want to play. In that regard, I do get weirded out on both sides of the fence when some people demand that role playing is just sitting back on, hey, move my thing 3 squares and I hit. That's not role playing. I don't care what anybody says. I know by the most technical, pedantic definition that's not role playing. But at the same time, I don't believe in the whole it's acting and that's just what you do 24/7.
That's right.
Damn it, Doc! Why don't you know Magic Missile by now? Come on.
So, all right, let's
But I've seen you. You roleplay good.
Who's that?
You, Max.
Oh, thank you. I try.
I don't see you ask a lot of out of character questions in like that Palladium game I saw.
No. Again, so the way I do it, I try to envision. So it's what I call getting in the character's headspace. I try to be in my character's headspace and do what my character do. And like I said, if I'm not sure, I try to ask it in a way that's in character. But I've asked Bear out of character questions, before. But yeah, this is why Rick calls me 3D, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm okay with 3D. But
3D is all in character.
Yeah, right. It's just less direct access to the world, I guess you'd say. Let's knock through these chats just so we can get through the final segment, because I don't know how to keep a show on topic, apparently.
I want someone to donate another $100 so we can take shots again.
Wayne, was it Brock? Says, I feel it's my job to be good and faithful to the story at hand. Interesting. I know a lot of people in my chat will take offense at the word story. Any meta knowledge I may have to do my best to try to role play in an in-game solution that makes sense in the current situation. Indirect. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading that. Let me find out. I'm missing commas in here. No, I'm not. Okay, so let me read that again. So I get your
comma you're missing. Any meta knowledge I may have, I do my best to try to role play an in-game solution that makes sense in the current.
Yeah. Okay. Rereading that. Yes. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I first of all, thank you for the $10. I very much appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. You guys have
the presentation of it is makes or breaks a lot of things. Like we were saying with the example before of like Phil being upstairs being attacked, how you go about as a player interrupting that makes all the difference. Do you just, I'm going to interfere because that's going on, or like I make some plausible reason I would head up there now to interrupt that makes all the difference for everybody at the table. And a good GM will roll with that. They'll say, okay, that works. You're staying in the spirit of the game, so we'll allow that, as opposed to, okay, you're trying to get over on me now, and that I'm not going to have. It's all about how you go about doing it 90% of the time.
I would say don't have a pre-planned story if that's what you're implying. The story is the result of the game. It is not the.
That's what we call emergent storytelling. Yeah. I have one caveat to that, and maybe this is off topic, but I still have one super chat to read. So I use a concept that is codified. I've been using it before then, but it's really codified well. So I'm going to use this example in Mutant Gen Lab Alpha. And in Mutant Gen Lab Alpha, while your characters might be low level, so to speak, newbie type characters, because you are the players, you're kind of the ones running the show and setting up. And what it is, it's robots as like jailers and you as freedom fighters / terrorists to try to break free. And what you do as the players is you have these cells of operation. We're going to try to go ambush this. We're going to go try to get this. And so you come, I think it's like 8 of them, if I remember correctly. So you have these 8 different cells that you're sending off to do whatever, one of which you play out. So what you do is the game master does his thing on the side. So one of this, and then you compare notes and find out, okay, you have the advantage. Roll a bunch of dice. I'll roll no dice. I have the advantage of this one. I'll roll a bunch of dice. You have no dice, and you weigh it out until you get to the one that the characters say, this is the one we're doing. Okay. Now, in Gen Lab Alpha, it says do that at the beginning. No, do that at the end. Why? Because next week, or whatever your next session is, you know what the adventure is. And my rule of thumb is a good player knows what he's supposed to do. And so you've decided that you're going to go blow up the confectionery. That's the mission. You don't get to change it midweek, okay? Because you are now on the path to doing this. Now, how you go about doing it or things you might do on the side, come up with whatever. But I am planning the adventure, and by that I mean making NPCs, making the confectionery, doing the things I need to do, with that end result in mind. The side stuff, I got to wing it. That's just how game mastering is. But no, you don't get it. We decided, we thought about it over the week, and we're just not going to do this now. It's like, no. This is what you decided to do, and a good player needs to understand that you started this mission, so to speak, You
Mhm.
kind of got to go through with it. At least start it, so to speak.
That's interesting. I guess I don't quite understand what the rolling was.
So
you
there's
have,
literally
like-
an odd a character aspect to the game.
Yeah.
Where you send these 8 cells out, and I don't want to overdo it, but and it's you, the game master versus you. So you got this little sheet, and you say, okay, I'm going to have 10 robots here. I'm going to have no robots there. I'm going to have 2 traps and a couple of robots here.
Mhm.
And then what that does is that facilitates a roll. So you might have been like, we're going to ransack this place. We don't care about numbers. We're just gonna go balls to the wall. So you might get a whole ton of dice, and I might get very few. And whoever gets the better roll wins that. It's because you can't do literally every operation that's going on because they're technically simultaneous operations.
So do you have like a character for each op, or do you like
it's in the
send the
setting.
player
It's in the
characters to
setting.
them?
It's characters that they communicate. They're basic leaders of a terrorist cell.
Yeah.
So one cell's going that way, one cell's going that way, one cell's going that way, and the player characters are doing this one, but they get to pick which one they do. That's the cool part of it. So there might be 8 ops. Which op are you guys doing? We're going to roll randomly for the other 7. But they
Are the player characters the leaders of the terror cell, or are they just who they sent?
No, they're leaders
like
of the
main characters, and then these little troop-like characters you're sending off.
Because yes, they're sending off they're sending off NPCs
like
to go.
TROUP.
Yes.
Yeah.
The reason for that, the way the game describes it, and I agree with it, is hey, the players are playing the game. Let them be the central part of the setting to break free. And I think we've dived into this a little bit more than I wanted to.
Yeah,
but conceptually, what I was trying to put out here is that these were just rolls, but then they got to pick the one. Then yes, I prepared the next session. Not over prepared, hopefully, but prepared the next session. And yes, I do expect my players to do that mission because that's what they signed up for. That might be outside of what some people's agency, but I think that I'm actually catering to your agency because that's what you picked. We just happened to end the session on a cliffhanger. You don't know how it turned out.
Right. Just deploy them and then end the session.
Yeah, right. That's essentially what happens.
Yeah.
So it's part of it's the rules are codified for that in Mutant Gen Lab Alpha. So anywho, let's hit this last super chat and we can go on here. Last one here, Law Dog, thank you very much for $10. He says the GM should be presenting the world to the characters. Sometimes it's going to be hard and sometimes it's going to be easy. It's up to the characters to decide what they want to tangle with. Boom.
Yes.
As a game master, I feel that every encounter should have an out. It's up to the players to take the out, player characters, but every encounter should have an out. Whether it's walk away, don't address it in the first place, whatever it happens to be. Start it and then retreat and run and hope you get away. Remember, not everybody fights to the death. But every encounter should have an out. Too many traps down the hallway, find another route. Dig through the ceiling. I don't know, but that's my take. All right. I guess with that, we'll go into the next segment.
I'm trying not to derail it.
No, I've already done that so much now.
I'm letting you end it.
But I know some people also have to go to certain times, so let's. I'll be honest. There's a couple people who complain about the whole "oh my God" stay on topic, but most people say they appreciate the conversation. So I'm going to just go with that. Oops, that's the wrong one. There we go. Just as a reminder, Game Master Insight airs live Fridays at 6 p.m. Central Time, except for the last Friday of the month, which, for the people watching live stream, that'll be next week. Why? Because next week is our members-only live stream, and guess what? A whole bunch of people got memberships today. So you can watch the members-only live stream next week, which is an Ask Me Anything with me and Heathen Dog. And other than giving away our social security number and maybe his firstborn kid, we really mean that. Ask us anything. Whatever it is, it's where you get a chance where you guys get to come and meet us and know us. We'll talk about some upcoming stuff. Members get the perks, get to know about some things first. But it's an AMA. It's a time for us to talk with you and get to know you, and you get to know us. So once this live stream ends, the full live stream will remain available to YouTube members only, while these 4 panel discussion segments will post to the public a month later. That's right. The troop one that we did at the beginning of this year still has not posted publicly because members get that perk. And of course, if you enjoy this discussion, please like this video, subscribe to all of the panelists' channels, which you can find in the description. And now let us get back to the last segment, and we will once again start with Phil the Thrill.
Oh, baby.
And we're going to talk about long-term effects and balancing metagaming. But before we do that, Phil, before we go into our last segment, we'll have our panel briefly remind us who they are, what content they create, and where you can find them on the internet. Just go ahead. We'll start with Phil.
My name's Phil the Thrill, and you'll find me on Rumble and X on that name. Mostly right now, I'm doing live streams with other people. We try to, I guess, advertise. What's the word? Promote. There it is. Promote a style called 4D role playing, or also known as role playing the hard way. And that's what we're doing right now. I'm just doing most of the live streams because I'm getting my master's. But
Okay. Timothy.
Hi, I'm Timothy Ferrelli. I'm running the YouTube channel Character to Dice. Welcome to Character to Dice, where we make characters so you don't have to. This past week, I finally got back onto that horse after a brief hiatus, and made a character of a noble who became an actor who became, a merchant who became an actor who became a noble for various reasons. So yeah, if you like characters, if you need a character, Palladium Fantasy, come on by YouTube. I've got to expand over to Rumble soon. I know I got to do that, but I'm there at YouTube, Characters and Dice, and watch how characters are made from my perspective. And if you catch me in a live stream, you can help out and maybe influence how the character is made.
Okay. And Doc.
Doc Flamingo. My first game, Ashes and Empires, is on drive-through. My second game, Age of Blood and Iron, will be out soon. And 1 week from Sunday, we're going to start posting on the YouTube channel here, Doc Flamingo, the playthroughs of the playtests. They may be live, they may be pre-recorded, and much depends on how difficult the streaming turns out to be for me, because I haven't even attempted this yet.
So I'm going to derail the conversation even before I ask Phil the first question.
nice.
Rocky McComb says, says, I like subsystems too, from what I hear. What I really like about the Free League games is I think that every game that they make, maybe except for Alien, tries to attract every play style. It really pushes role-playing, kind of a rules-light-ish system. A lot of little role-playing nuggets in there with terms of a character's background and your relationships with other characters and so forth. And they're not big. They're one sentence. That's what they're meant to be. But then for the people who aren't strong role players or don't like it, there's almost always a metagame concept. In Mutant Year Zero, you're building the arc. In Coriolis, you're dealing with your ship and paying back the bills for that, right? In Mutant Gen Lab Alpha, you're the terrorist group. In Mutant Mechatron, you're literally doing work orders, they call them, because you're a robot doing IT tech support, trying to keep your dome from cracking. So, and in Mutant Elysium, it's political machinations, but it's an out of character element. It's actually meant to be out of character. It tells you to be out of character when you're doing it. So what it does is it allows for different play types at the table to still have an aspect of the game that they can enjoy.
So, Max, wouldn't that necessarily be good metagaming in that aspect then, when you're dealing with these different systems you were just talking about?
It's kind of hard to metagame out of character stuff. So let's use the template for Mutant Gen Lab Alpha that I was talking about earlier. In Mutant Gen Lab Alpha, as the game master, I'm doing a secret ballot. As the players, you're doing a secret ballot. I don't know what you're doing. You don't know what I'm doing until we lay it out on the table.
But as the players, can't we discuss that amongst us?
But again, you don't know what I know about what's going on, and you don't know how many robots I have left, what they're focusing on, what's going on. All you know is what you're. Basically, you generally know what your characters know. Now, do you know the stats of robots because you've read the book? Sure, but I don't care about that because you don't know where I'm going to place them.
True, but
also you're role playing as generals, so you kind of get to have
in that one regard. Sure.
In that situation, I guess it's Modiphius, but Dune, the Dune, Modiphius Dune has a lot of those like little mini games also. I kind of like the idea of having the role playing game that caters to board gamers. I don't hate it. I'm both.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't get into Modifius as much as I did do Free League, but and I think Modifius lost all of the lines that I enjoy. So Mutant Chronicles, well, to be fair, I wasn't a Conan fan. I thought the books were horribly written, but anywho. All right, Phil.
Okay.
Final real primary question of the night. There'll be follow-ups. Over the course of a campaign, metagaming can either strengthen group cohesion or create ongoing friction. How do you personally manage its evolving presence to ensure a balanced and enjoyable experience for everyone?
Okay. I limit the heck out of it because I think that it's almost like corruption how I treat it. Or if you're a Christian, sinning. So like it becomes easier and easier every time you do it. And eventually your game is going to devolve into this crappy board game because we're all just talking about all like the tactical knowledge. We're just having this weird over the table discussion about how we should handle things. So I believe that the purpose of a role-playing game is to role play. And I see metagaming as almost the opposite of role playing. So I would highly encourage that you not role play at all or metagame, except for
Yeah, 40 guys hate that whole role playing
we hate
thing.
role
What
play. Don't do it anymore. But yeah, I would limit it, try to nip it in the bud as much as possible. After the session, you say, "Hey, I know you were metagaming," and then, but you don't interrupt your session to point it out. I would say that's how I would do it.
Do you believe that metagaming has the capacity to encourage or discourage risk-taking in extended campaigns?
So it takes away the risk. So that's the problem. There is, so the part A of your statement goes away when you're metagaming. So, but I really want to do risk-taking, and I want there to be risk involved, because if I am just pretending, I guess I am pretending, but if I'm just playing at having these challenges and pretending there is a risk, then it's not like real. You know what I mean? I know it's not real. I don't know how to, there's like, it's not immersive at all.
Do you think it's more playing math than it is playing a character?
Metagaming is, yes, for sure. It's playing logic with the game. I would say, yeah, that's what I would say.
Well, okay, so let me use an example I think I used on another recent episode. You got a character, and he's fighting the person in front of him, and he's fighting. Something comes through the ceiling, and I don't care what, we're not talking a specific game here. This is a notional example, folks.
Yeah.
And something comes through the ceiling behind him. Here's a little crash or whatever. Common sense says this guy in front of him has a sword, is trying to fight him, and is trying to attack him. Plus, he's already got his momentum into that person.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, the rules of the game, maybe this guy's wearing plate mail armor and the dude that he's not even looking at behind him is wearing no armor or something, whatever it happens to be, says that's an easier attack. And he's like, oh, I'm going to attack the guy behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, everybody can come up with a scenario where that makes sense. But generally speaking, that's not how way people react to a situation. They're going to continue fighting the person in front of them and hopefully keep that guy off of them until you know, they're like, shit, you're going to be easier, you know, not just assume, well, you know, I'm using a bad example, but I think you get what I'm saying here. But what they're doing is they're playing the numbers instead of what would be a normal human reaction to that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say about that? And if you can come up with a better scenario, by all means, please do so. But people that play numbers versus playing what makes sense for the organic situation.
Mm-hmm. I would say that the character is going to determine what target that character is going to fight. So If the character is a really thoughtful rogue or a very cerebral type fighter, then they might do a faint riposte move, stab the guy without the armor, and go back to business move.
Okay.
If you're talking about a enraged barbarian, he should not be turning around. Like, he probably doesn't even know that happened.
Fair.
And he's still like hacking away. So in that way, it's almost like out of character. Even though you've been given the knowledge as a player, it's almost still out of character knowledge because your character is so focused. You should be role playing. If he's focused, you should be role playing that focus. And so that would be my answer to that.
No, that was a really good answer because I was trying to frame the question that I wasn't leading it in a way, and I know I was leading it, but I think that's a very good answer in terms of staying organic to the character and how you can justify both ways.
Yeah, roleplay solves everything, as the great Shauner used to say. Rest in peace.
All right. Let's move on over to Timothy. Over the course of a campaign, metagaming can either strengthen group cohesion or create ongoing friction. How do you personally manage its evolving presence to ensure a balanced and enjoyable experience for everyone?
Metagaming can grow kind of like the dark side.
Once you start down the path, forever will it consume you.
Really, it really does. We have a Fallout game that we occasionally play because of schedules, and I had a very intelligent character that was a vault dweller. So I met up with the fellow members on the table, and we decided we're going to go explore and get resources from MacDill Air Force Base. So we go and we pulled up a map, and two of us are Air Force vets. One of us was an Army vet, and we guided the GM. I was like, well, this is this building, this is this building, this is building, and we ended up using that metagaming knowledge to guide our path for the best possible results. Should we have done that? Not entirely, but again, at that table, metagaming is more acceptable because there are some situations that we know that our characters should know or possibly may know. So what? Yes, it was fun. Did it eliminate all the risks? No, there was hordes of opponents that we were trying to avoid, and we had to take on, but we still utilize it to the best to capitalize on our survivability aspect. So, how do you manage it? Again, you have to prevent it as much as possible. You have to stay on top of it, or you accept it. Sometimes if that's the path the table is going, and you're okay with it, roll with it. Who cares? It's your table. So,
okay. I don't really have a follow-up for you because you answered two of them with your answer there, and I don't want to dive. Oh no, I am going to dive down there. So I'm torn on that. Part of me says, hey, you know what the players are doing and the information they're giving me just is helping me progress this along. So no harm, no foul. But my experiences, especially watching tables more than the people that have been in my game, is that players will then manipulate that. Let's just arbitrarily say you get to a point and you're like, oh, we all need some food, and I know that building's the chow hall. And that's when the game master needs to have the authority to be like, well, in this world it's very similar to the real world, but that isn't the chow hall here. Now you've come across whatever, the armory. Nope, that was a bad one. No, but you've come across something else.
Yes.
And you just say, damn it, I was trying to keep them out of food, and it's because they know where the chow hall is, and I thought it was going to be somewhere else. Now they can have it. I really don't think it matters because of this right here. It's a cop-out question with a cop-out answer, but it's the reason it's cop-out is because to me, it's obvious. Duh, if you're having fun, you did it right. Right? And this isn't to mess with Rocky. Anybody who knows me knows that anytime somebody says, well, as long as you have fun, you did it right. Well, that's a cop-out answer. Give me a real answer. But because that's the ultimate answer. In this case, if it didn't ruin the session, the immersion, the fun, then it was all good. If it did, if it made the game master feel like he got manipulated, well, then he should have taken his power as the game master. And this is probably where Phil and I will disagree. Take his power as game master, be like, no, this is my world. And you thought that was going to be the chow hall, made sense for that to be the chow hall, but instead you found the brig.
It's the death pit room.
It's the death pit room. Don't know why the Air Force or an Army base has a death pit room, but there you found it, right? But, so...
if the characters are veterans, then it's not metagaming.
No, the characters weren't.
Okay.
The players are.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Then
yeah. That was 100% metagaming.
Okay.
Yeah. And
what I like about your example, Timothy, that you gave there is because the viewer who's watching now can look at that and say, there's nothing wrong with that. Or be like, whoa, I can see that getting abused. And it's going to be up to each individual person to now decide, was that the right way to go about it or the wrong way to go about it? Might have been fun for them, but it might not be fun for Doc. It might be glorious, great time forever for Phil. Every table is going to be different than that. And this is supposed to be food for thought, suggestions, advice, ideas for you guys to think about for your table.
yeah, and as a GM, you always have that prerogative of, say, okay, you're right. In real world, that's the chow hall. Here, it's not. You were expecting seafood. You got paperwork. Have fun.
Paperwork. You were in the Air Force.
Can I give the anti-fun argument?
Yeah, please.
I already did.
That's all I've been doing the whole time. I would say that I like what we call what we go for in role playing is what I like to call utility, which is an economics term, right? Where as long as I'm getting what I want out of the role playing game, then it's good. Fun has utility, but so does having a very immersive experience and losing myself into the story and doing those things. I wouldn't say that's necessarily fun. It's more specific, maybe. It's more of like a subcategory or harder to reach goal than just having fun.
Well, I think you and I
can have
probably
fun
agree on that.
Booze,
I mean, I would still call it fun, but my fun is being serious, if that makes sense. Yeah. I'm called the no fun guy a lot because I don't want people sitting at my table making meme jokes all the time, talking out of character, blurting out, insane commentary. If there's, and I don't do this a lot, but if there is a really good role-playing, kind of a deep, serious role-playing game, I don't want somebody at the table going, because that might be fun for that dumbass, but it's not fun for me in terms of being in the character, being in the session.
Yeah, you like gritty games?
Yes, absolutely. I like gritty games, and not dours. A lot of people think I like dour games. No, I like gritty games where when you do survive and you win, you're like, yes, we won, dude, awesome, we won. I'm looking more for stuff like that. And when I role play, you've watched me do the Palladium thing. Even though I'm playing a Thane who's immature and stuff, I'm still pretty serious with the character to some degree. Those one-liners that kept coming out were not meant to be one-liners. That's what I think made them even more funny, is that was just supposed to be how he is. But now somebody else's table might be, dude, come on. You got to let people laugh and have some fun and just sit around the table and relax and so forth. That's not fun for me.
That's kind of my crux of this whole metagaming argument, is that it is disingenuous. So you are not getting a genuine immersive moment out of your game if you're metagaming. So that's why it diminishes the game, in my opinion.
Well, I think a big problem is the word fun is so broad and amorphous.
Fair.
That in of itself, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, there's all different types and levels of fun. So, I mean...
But everybody says as long as you're having fun. So
what the hell do they mean? No, that's a perfect example is why I call it a cop-out answer, because duh. Right. And again, I'm definitely not knocking Rocky who made that comment, because his point is well taken for Timothy on that one. You guys had fun. Hey, great, have at it. But I want, when people, whether it's on this panel or I'm talking to folks about it, well, great, they're having fun, but what's fun about that for you in this regard? Whether it's role playing, whether it's messing with your players, whether it's simultaneous attack, I don't know, but I like to get to the more of the meat of, well, okay, great, you had fun, but what about that was fun, if that makes sense. So, but let me get to
that is settled with the social contract.
I agree, whether written or just understood. I generally agree with that. Let me get this the final question out to Doc Flamingo so he has a chance to answer it, and then we'll couple follow-ups and we'll wrap up. Over the course of a campaign, metagaming can either strengthen group cohesion or create ongoing friction. How do you personally manage its evolving presence to ensure a balanced and enjoyable experience for everyone?
Well, it may be an overly laconic answer, but it just
There's
if
our
you
word
make
for the day.
make a point of playing the game and not the system, you'll stay on the path.
What's the difference between the game and the system?
Being in the scenario and basically role playing, as
Okay.
Phil would put it, as opposed to, oh, how do I make this work within the confines of the mechanics? As soon as you start playing to the systems, as opposed to existing in the world, that's where you start going astray.
So would you say that my concept of trying to be in the headspace of my character fits that?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the place to approach it from. And I think and this stuff will build up, but it's clutter. And after a while, clutter becomes a mess. And a mess becomes a ruin eventually. So, I mean, it's all, and one of the reasons I think strategic level play is an excellent antidote to that, because I think that provides an outlet to the players where they can kind of game things and work things out without having to do it on the tactical level.
Sure.
Where they're trying to game the system. If you create a scenario where they are as a group within the game world, planning things out and trying to figure out how to make things work and go their way, that provides them an outlet for that, so they're less likely to try to pull something over during the course of the actual play.
So that leads me to ask, how might a game master encourage, I guess, healthy, is that a word? Healthy metagaming that benefits the entire group without sacrificing the spirit, verisimilitude of the game, or more the setting and campaign? Or do you think that it should just be avoided at all costs?
It's that's I hate to say avoid at all costs, because I mean stuff's going to creep up now and then, and it can be worked into the scenario too to some degree, but it's to be avoided, I would say, for the most part. But again, you have to find creative outlets for that energy in the players. That basically comes down to the game master. I think you have to provide situations where they feel like they have some agency in the broader scale of the campaign, however long it be, even if it's a one shot in the scenario that's going on, where they feel they're not just reacting to everything that happens to them over and over and over again. And then that'll, I think, encourage them to not constantly, okay, well, how do I make this particular thing go my way, and what do I have to do to make that? This isn't coming out very clearly. I'm not sure how to put it exactly. But I think it's mainly just facilitating at the game. It ultimately comes down to the game master to police this stuff.
Okay.
And to provide other outlets for that energy in the players.
Do you think that a person that is doing like big level strategizing has to be playing a strategically minded character, or do you think that should be fine if you're doing this kind of mini game style, mini game scratching the itch thing that you're describing?
I think everyone does it to some degree. I mean, with wildly different results depending on how clever they are, but I mean that can be worked into the game as well. But I think that people naturally are inclined to just figure out how they're going to get ahead.
Mm.
Also, if a player is explaining a concept or roles, or going back to my Fallout game when we were laying out, well, this is this building is this building is this, to the GM who was not a vet. That's if you're explaining what's happening for that situation, that the GM can understand, and they make their choice on what's going on to help them to understand the scene as a whole. I don't think that that's metagaming, or if it is metagaming, I don't think that's negative metagaming, because that's you're helping the GM understand what's going on as well.
To an extent, but also I hate the idea of players correcting the game master.
That if it was a rules question, I would agree with you. But when you're saying, okay, here's a map of MacDill Air Force Base, well, that's a hangar. That's a mess hall. That's headquarters. Your average citizen isn't going to know that, and that could be for any situation that you'll have a subject matter expert at the table can help educate, as long as it's done in a instructional fashion, not as the, well, this is how it is.
An example, so in second, third, whatever, second or third iteration of Dungeons and Dragons that we were playing when I was in Germany, the game master, he hadn't played second edition in a long time, and I've run so many games of second edition. I still know most, not all, but I still know most of the rules or their house rules that I changed anyway. And so what would happen is he would come up with something, he'd make a ruling that didn't make any sense to me. And I'd say, the rule for that is XYZ. And he'd, oh, thank you for the correction. Or he'd say, no, I'm going to go with this. Whatever his response was, I was done. I didn't keep beating it down. I was just like, because I knew that he wasn't remembering all the rules. I'm like, no, this should work like this. And if he said, nope, for whatever reason, it's not here, or I don't like it, or whatever, I didn't care. That's his game. The way I look at it, it's his game. But now I know going forward, whatever is going on, it is. But I wouldn't continue to argue, but I would bring it up.
And especially when you're dealing with new GMs, that's also something to keep in mind as the player. I've got a game I'm playing in. I've got someone who's an experienced GM but's never run a Palladium game before, and so several of us are pretty familiar with Palladium, and we'll give them say, well, the rule says this, or historically this happened, and so whatever. But you, as the player, you have to respect what the GM says goes. So if the GM says, well, this is happening, that's happening.
Sure. I think that I would say social contract does this fine. And also, I mean, if you're new to the game, you need to hire some rules experts. Be like, hey, you and you, let me know if I'm messing up.
Sorry, I have a very demanding cat.
Like, if you're going to GM a game and not know the rules, then I'd say you should enlist your players to correct you. Stop having an ego about it.
That's fair. I generally think there's some differences, but I generally think we're similar in belief on metagaming across all four of us. So I'm going to flip the script for a moment. And this follow-up question is going to be for everybody. I'm going to start with Timothy on this one. Has metagaming ever introduced fresh perspectives that elevated a campaign's play, especially cinematic play?
Only when you're dealing with more modern or near future games, because in that situation, or if well, no, I wouldn't. Okay, maybe not only, because a wizard using a more scientifically aware wizard, or for especially if you're the far future that has magic in it, like Phase World. You can utilize scientific skills, scientific knowledge to enhance the capabilities of magic. So it's depending on mostly it is dependent on the age. Modern to far future is where I would say that sweet spot lands. Can that happen in fantasy level? Yes, it can, but not often because you don't have the access to the knowledge. So that's what it boils down to is being able to utilize your your modern knowledge in the correct setting.
Okay. Phil, what do you think?
No. I would say, well, so me and Crispy and Max Mr. Max Boivin have started doing this ultimate no prep challenge where we roll to see who the GM is and what the setting is and what the tone is. And so we have, by doing that, this is why I've realized that using tone to color your actions is necessary if you want a tone. So I would say maybe in that way, I don't know if utilizing tone would be considered metagaming though. As we've talked throughout this, I think I'm getting a little too loosey goosey with this phrase metagaming. So I want to backtrack. Let's just go back. We'll start over.
Well, how about this? Let me. This is not the way the question I think should be clarified, but I think it'd be a fun way to do it. Do you think that allowing a character, allow is such a bad word, but we're going to go with it. Allowing a character to fall back to the game system itself to make decisions can allow for legitimately interesting outcomes.
So that's kind of like saying knowing the laws of physics changes how you interact with the world, and I don't think that that's really the knowledge of the system should be ingrained in your actions and should inform what you can do. So I guess I don't really see system knowledge as being metagaming ever, aside from monster profiles and crap like that.
Yeah, well, I'd say the only place that is a huge problem is like a game like Pathfinder. With character development, where I'm going to dip into this for one level, and now I get this feat, which multiplies this other thing I can do by 5,000, and now everyone dies if I look at them.
Yeah.
So the Lego characters.
Yeah, that
Yes.
is where that kind of thing would break down very heavily for me. But
we're saying
yeah,
good ways.
Yeah, but yeah, yeah, it's very much like what Phil's saying. The laws of physics are going to govern your action, and the rule system is basically standing in for that. So it's all really comes down to a matter of tone and spirit, I think.
Doing a bunch of simultaneous attacks like an a-hole.
Okay, okay, simultaneous attacks, but how about everybody decides to jump off the cliff because they know it's only 10d6 damage and they can take it?
Right. You're not in the real world, so it's like I want to sometimes be a ninja that does crouching tiger, hidden dragon crap. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
That would look pretty.
So it's like what? I don't know. I'm not. I guess I'm not live or die to have realism.
The funny thing is you're putting me in a conundrum because I've preached a long time. I've actually writing it into the game that I'm writing, that the game system are the universal constants of the universe. They are. So if it doesn't match the real world outcomes, well, that's too bad because that's just the way this universe works. At the same time, I don't want people jumping off of 100-foot cliff. and so it's easy for me to say, no, you jump off a 100-foot cliff. If you come out alive, you're going to be busted up and you're going to be convalescing for weeks. But does that make me a hypocrite?
I mean, why are you designing a system where that's not the case?
Well, there's that. Yeah.
To be fair, the system is the case, but I'm just saying that because I use the terminology of that the game system are the universal constants for the setting or for the world, for the universe. then yeah, suck it up, Buttercup. You can jump off 100-foot cliffs as long as you don't roll really high in those rolls or something.
That is pretty crazy. I agree.
Maybe I am a hypocrite in that one because I wouldn't necessarily allow that. Sorry, cussing. I would add in, exploding dice. Something's going to happen here. You're not jumping up 100-foot cliff and just walking away from it like nothing happened, unless it's a superhero game. Maybe I'm just being too pedantic about that.
I don't know, because you're not wrong. It should kill you.
Well, I think it's also the one you need, like just like in a movie or a book, you need to establish right from the get-go the level of reality you are dealing with.
Sure.
And then if a system, and players will, if there is a hole, however small, some player is going to find a way to worm through it. They're just going to. And my attitude as a game master is then I have the right to chop your head off the moment you poke your head through it if I think you're being an ass.
There you go. I would say this it's a fault with the system. I don't know. Or you can social contract where it's a homebrew.
Or, much to my chagrin, you can just accept that as being the system, and that's what's going to happen. But that means the enemy is going to do it too. So when the enemy jumps off that cliff and you're like, he's dead, and then you meet him again. Dun, dun, dun.
I want my $2.
I want my $2, yes. Love that movie.
Pretty sure it's a common trait of supervillains that they can survive falls that are off camera. So.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
That's fair. And, that's absolutely a way a lot of people handle lots of aspects. We talked about that a little earlier, so I can't argue with that. So like I said, I'm starting to rethink, am I being a hypocrite in this when I push back against some of this stuff? Because I fully believe that the game system is universal. So that's the term I use. They are the universal constants of the universe, and that's how people are going to react to things by the universal constants of this universe, not necessarily of what you find in the exact real world. So I'm sorry if the acceleration of gravity in my game isn't 9.81 meters per second squared. It's going to be whatever, I'm just making this up now. We'll use D&D at D6 for every 10 feet, whatever that turns out to be, and that's what we're going to use.
I would say that you're not a hypocrite. You're just identifying a homebrew rule that you would like in your game.
That's fair.
But Rocky is right. The system is the rules of the physics of the game that you're playing, of the world that you're playing in.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be something for the audience to pick apart and decide what they like, what they don't like, what they want to modify on their own in that one. Anything left on the table that you guys want to get out with regard to metagaming? I think we beat this horse. I think it's dead, but not overly dead. It isn't squished yet, but if you've got any final comments, we'll start with Phil the Thrill. Any final comments you want to make about metagaming that you didn't think got stated?
I used to be pro metagaming because I really like the idea of having a cinematic story. But the more I have played with a focus on independence of players, the more I find that outcomes that are not contrived are way more satisfying. And I highly recommend that you not use metagaming because those outcomes do happen. Occasionally you're going to get your butt kicked, and that's fine. But you're going to get those really awesome outcomes, and those are going to feel like epic moments. Highly encourage you not to use metagaming, except for the purposes of tone. But I don't even think tone is metagaming now. I've changed my mind on that. So just no metagaming now. All right.
Timothy, any final comments, words that you want to add?
Be mindful. If you utilize it in a way that makes sense of the game, you're good. If you utilize it in a way of the sense that doesn't make sense of the game, that's bad. And also, didn't think about this before. Some games have a meta game component that it's built around, like the 2D20 system. A lot of those have components in there that's, I'm going to spend this to, so be mindful, be aware of what you're doing, and as long as the table enjoys it, as long as the table likes it, roll with it.
Okay, and Doc, any final saved rounds you want to shoot off?
I think my attitude basically comes down to, yes, the rules are the faces of the game, but congratulations, Sir Isaac freaking Newton. You just discovered a new and lethal law.
Could Newton have ever predicted quantum mechanics?
Could Newton have predicted karma points?
There you go.
Oh, I need that on a t-shirt now.
All right. So a couple things here. Before we wrap up, I'll have my final commentary in a moment. I think I blurted it all out already, but I'm going to have my final commentary here in just a moment. Also, for the people watching the live stream, it's not over when the end credits play. That's just a place for me to clip off so I know where to end this and separate what's going to be the video in the future versus continuing the live stream. So when the credits play, we're going to be right back and we're going to chat with you and we're going to have the giveaway tonight. And we're going to have all types of fun. So this Sunday, though, on RPG Digest, I should put this up. Oop, there we go. This Sunday on RPG Digest, Kevin Simbita of Palladium Books, and no Sean with him this time. Just him. Going to be here, and we're going to be talking about what's going on at Palladium. What kind of fun and interesting things are going on out there? There's a lot of stuff that's been going on. If you keep abreast of those weekly updates, you're going to find out that Palladium has been working on changing the world, it seems. So lots of new stuff, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Not too much, but we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to talk about damage, health, recuperation, all types of fun stuff like that in the Palladium system. So, and then next Friday is members only with me and Heathen Dog. A whole bunch of people got gifted memberships today, so that's going to be me and Heathen Dog. Next week, it's an Ask Us Anything, so come in with your poignant questions or your weird, whatever you want to know. Like I said, except for my social security number and giving away Heathen Dog's kid. Whatever you want to know, we'll talk about. I guess I didn't need to put that up yet because I got to read some super chats now. Over there on the Rumble side, Grizzly Beardo for $5. Thank you very much. Says RIGGED spells rigged. Well, you know what? You super chatted. You'll at least be in the contest, even if it's rigged. You'll have the semblance of fairness, right? I'm going to metagame you out, buddy.
Gotta get a super chat in real quick. Hold on.
What's that?
I got to put a super chat in so I can get on that.
That's the best way because membership. I have to check. Bear rigged. Let me go to over here. There we go. Got a couple of chats. Did we read this one already from Law Dog? GM should be presenting the world the characters. Sometimes it's gonna be hard. Sometimes it's gonna be easy. It's up to the characters to decide what they want to tangle with. I think we read that one already. But if not, there it is again. I agree.
Yep.
Now, I don't know what he was talking to directly, but I'm going to say that it was on that generic topic, not your echo. So that's just not how life works. Sometimes you're forced into confrontation as a result of assertion of someone's will that has more control over the climate than you do. I actually don't disagree with this. There still needs to be an out, even if that out is surrender and think of a new plan. I don't like the idea of putting characters in a literal no-win scenario. Now, they can make it one, but I don't like the idea of putting them in a literal no-win scenario.
I think Crispy killed my character in a no-win scenario.
Or did you just miss an important key point?
Well, yeah, to be fair, we didn't shoot good in the rounds prior, so that's
running wasn't an option?
I wasn't involved in the shooting, but I died because of it.
Oh, okay.
I had a GM
Sorry,
kill
I
off.
take it back, Crispy.
I had a GM kill off my first character I made for second edition with tower shield and full plate. First level characters. We did kind of game the system a bit, but yeah, I was not happy.
Characters die.
Well, he wasn't happy that we were able to game masterpiece equipment right off the bat.
So, Phil, this next comment, I'm going to have you answer this one.
Okay.
Talk explicitly about what you call the social contract. Sometimes contract can be, well, I agreed to play this shitty game, so here I am.
Good question. A social contract is figured out usually in our session 0, and that is the session where we all get together. This is the 40 style, where we all get together and we talk about what the premise of the game is going to be. We're going to generate characters and then talk about things like the rules of 4D is basically you're always in character. You say where you are, what you're doing, and what you're saying on your turn, and then it's the next person's turn. And another thing will be like, if we succeed or fail a roll, who describes what happens? So we'll say like, we describe successes. The GM will describe failures. That's a common one we do. And other things, no eating, drinking, or no eating on stream. Or,
how do I sign up?
Yeah,
I'm there.
A bunch of generic, have a good connection, crap like that. It's pretty standard. Oh, and then 4D involves what's called co-creation of things. So Max talked about it for a second, where he's like, if I'm in a room, I'm not going to just say I grab a telephone. That is that 4D sort of co-creation thing where you just spawn things that make sense in the universe, and then you can talk on it. So in the social contract, we'll discuss limitations on co-creation and stuff like that, kind of show what you can do. So basically, really rules that we all agree to on how we're going to play the game, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't take very long, but it's clear what the expectation is, or like how to handle a time skip, who starts them, stuff like that.
I mean, I have a social contract as well. It's not one that people sign, and it's kind of in flux to some degree because I don't remember everything. But it's basically sessions. To me, session 0 is the social contract.
Yeah, it's not meant to be something that's strange. It's what people are doing. It's just we call it a social contract.
Yep. In fact, that's one of the new. There's some, we'll just say grognards, even though I'm one, that don't like the term session 0. But I think that sums up. You know what? Hey, Tim, you want to come?
People hate words for some reason. I don't get it. Kind of like how role players don't like to be called improv. I don't understand why people hate a word, but I don't really care what words are used to define things. I don't pay attention to connotation very much.
I'm a prescriptionist, so I can't stand when people use words in wrong ways.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying, like, who cares what it's called? You know what I mean?
That's fair. Let's get to did you guys want to talk about social contract real quickly, or should I knock out these last 2 chats?
No, I think that covers everything for me. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Rocky gifted 5 Legion Myth memberships. Now, here's what's going to happen with these memberships. After this portion, the video portion of the live stream is over, I'm going to run my app again. I don't think that YouTube captures memberships the same day, because it doesn't seem to add them when people gift memberships or they become a member right at the last second. I will run it though, and what that will do, it means I will download the membership, the updated membership from YouTube. I will run it, and if you're captured, you're in today's giveaway. If not, well, then you'll be in the next giveaway, which won't be next; will be the week after. So I want to be upfront about that. It's just another perk. We try to give the members, but I can't guarantee what YouTube does, and I can't scroll back and find out everybody that was gifted stuff. But Rocky, thank you very much. And for those who were gifted the memberships, do I see the names? Brian James. Hey, I think he's actually watching right now. The Last, David Walker, Francois Rochier, Palladium fans know who he is, and CBK Ply. Yeah, he's won a couple of times, I think. So there we go. So the first time around, I didn't recognize any name, but maybe one. This time I recognize most of them. So there you go. Congratulations on your memberships. If you're watching, please thank Rocky for that. And then finally, Bear, it's rigged. It's rigged, Bear. I don't know why you do this, but he's been a member for 13 months, so thank you very much. So, all right, with that, let me put up the end screen. I'm going to fix this end screen if I can find a Photoshop file for this at some point, so it's not covering my lovely face, because this is my time now. Please subscribe. Thank you very much to tonight's panel. We have Timothy Frelly, we have Phil the Thrill, and we have Doc Flamingo. Thank you very much for you guys for being on the show. And of course, whether you agree or disagree with any panelists, I sincerely hope their perspectives both entertained and educated you and gave you some food for thought for your future gaming sessions. If you enjoy this discussion, please like this video, subscribe to Legion of Myth, and to all the panelists whose links you can find in the description. Now, for my final thoughts, I think I blurted them all out, but let's see what my notes are. And unfortunately, I don't have a editor here. I just write down notes during the live stream to talk about things I want to do. Metagaming to me is basically using personal or out of character knowledge. I'm not a fan of it, but as I think it was Doc said earlier, sometimes, or maybe it was Timothy, I forget, sometimes you just kind of let it go if it's not crazy. You don't have to be aggressive about it every opportunity that somebody, metagames. I didn't ask this question, and I should have, and maybe this will be a topic for another time, but one of the things that I've run into is that you have a lot of the OSR style games where you don't really have skills, you just have classes, right? And a lot of that is based on player knowledge. That's meant for players to do things as a player. And sure, they've got their class behind them, but they don't have skills. They don't have talents or feats or whatever. So the players are doing things even with an intelligence of 3 that you might not think that intelligence 3 character can do. And I think the games are somewhat designed around that. On the flip side, you've got more modern story games, or we'll even say like the 4D style, where, hey, you should be in the headspace of your character. You should be doing what is organic to the character, and you kind of got to take it. Does it make sense for your character to know this or not? And then there's everything in between. One of the questions that a game master, even a player, has to think about is how do you determine if your character knows something or not? That can be a tough one sometimes. But ultimately, I think that Doc had the right handle on this one. If somebody is just like, I'm going to go upstairs right now because I heard a commotion. Or if it's more organic, there's nothing going on down here. Let me run upstairs to check out, see if Bill's okay. Sometimes it's, even if the intent in the player's soul, in his heart, because you can't always read that, is the same, the application of it can determine whether you might determine if it's metagaming. And then again, you might not care, or you might hate it in both of those regards. I don't know. I talked about the troll. You can always take creatures and change what their abilities are. I'm a firm believer spirit of the law trumps the letter of the law. What I mean by that is a troll still needs to be a troll. It still needs to regenerate, and it still needs to have something that it's weak to, or something that it doesn't regenerate. But that doesn't mean you can't change it up. Let's use Ravenloft 2nd Edition for an example. Not all vampires drink blood. Some spinal tap you. Some drink your eyeball juice. So, I mean, it's gross, but they have other ways of still being vampires while still kind of maintaining the spirit. It's always something I think you should consider. Always change modules. We were talking about modules a little bit earlier. Always change modules. The players have read them. No, I didn't. Yes, he did. Let's see, super chats. This is for Timothy. 1920s libraries censored a lot of books. Remember that as well. Let's see. Did the Paladin thing, more super chatting stuff. Is min-maxing metagaming? I think it depends on the setting and if you're within the spirit of your class. If you're doing something fighter-ish, then sure, as a fighter, you'd know it, or a soldier, or whatever it happened to be. If you're a starship captain, you're probably going to know some things about your ship, even if you don't have every exact skill that would indicate that. If you're going to know, so if you're playing a scientist, sure, maybe the color laser will mean something, but that's only if the game itself facilitates that. If the game does not facilitate a way of discerning between a incandescent light laser, if that's even a term, versus a chemical laser, versus if it's green or I can't can't see it. There we go. Transparent, whatever, or red or whatever. If it goes pew pew, like in my game, I actually wrote it specifically. All lasers are brightly colored, and they either go bzz, pew 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 or something in that regard. So to avoid some of that, it's going to depend on the spirit of the game, the setting, or the class. And with that, we talked about the Quantum Ogre. And there we go. I think, and everything else I blurted out sometime through the stream. So it's a great panel tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the discussion. Again, good food for thought. And with that, I want to remind folks one more time, if you're watching a live stream, hang out. We're not going anywhere. I just got to play the outro music, and we'll get a couple other people in here, and we'll just chat about gamer nerd stuff here in just a moment. So with that, thanks again, guys, and I hope everybody has a great night.